What is up, everybody? Curvis54 here, coming in with the last-minute commentary. Thankfully slipped in here just as this match is getting started, and not only as this match is getting started, but as this tournament is getting started, as this is the first scheduled matchup of the Darker Side tournament. And we've got Neo versus Luckless. Now, I'll give you the rundown real quick on these two guys. Neo is a pretty high-level runner in this category. Now, there are two subcategories, one for frog skip and one for no frog skip. And on the no frog skip leaderboard, Neo is, I believe, 4th place. So he is a pretty top-level runner. And Luckless is no slouch himself. He is seated lower in this tournament. He comes in with a 3-hour 52-minute PB compared to Neo's 3-hour 26. You see a lot of big time gaps in this category, because it's very long and it's very hard to be consistent. But with it being such a long category, it also allows for a lot of potential mistakes to happen. So Yeah, we're gonna see Neo. He, I believe, went for the treasure chest moon. Done optimally, if you manage to get the clip through the ceiling to get back to the Odyssey, it is about a half second faster than getting the moon on the cliff side. And in that case, you will get both of these moons in this category because there's 880 total moons that you can collect in this game. And for this category, you need to collect 500 of them to access the darker side level. So with both of those moons being pretty quick, you will wind up collecting both of them at some point. It's just a matter of when. So Neo will collect the chest moon first visit, Luckless will collect the cliffside moon, and then once they come back to Cascade Kingdom later on, they'll get the opposite moon that they didn't collect the first time around. So just a slightly different ordering there. Something else you might have noticed already is that they went ahead and planted a seed. That will later grow into a plant that spawns a moon. So you'll see some stuff like that setting up things for later on in the run, because what you're going to see in this category is more or less you're going to revisit every single kingdom. There's only a few small exceptions to that, but almost every kingdom you come back to later and collect more moons, because how this game works is there are a bunch of story moons in each kingdom, and once you complete all of the story moons in a given kingdom and beat the game, there are these giant moon rocks that spawn, that open up, and when you hit them, they spawn a bunch of really fast moons into the kingdom. So you can get like half of the available moons in the game before beating the game, and then basically in the post game, after opening all the moon rocks, the moon count more or less doubles. So since we want a lot of those really fast moons from the moon rocks, we're going to wind up doing all the story moons pretty much all on the first visits, so that we will have access to those moon rocks later on. And here they're going to go for Pyramid Clip. I believe both these runners are on the 1.2 version of the game, and in that version, this clip is very difficult. I don't want to say frame perfect because we don't know that, but it's very positionally and timing precise. So as you can see, Luckless here struggling a little bit with it. This is, a pretty normal occurrence. Even top level runners, and Luckless finally breaks through. Not a terrible clip. Certainly not what you want to see, but that can happen to the best of them. Even people like Neo, people even, world record holders will occasionally struggle immensely with that clip. So nothing to be ashamed of there. You can't let it get to you though. Gotta just let that clip be frustrating and put it behind you and play well from there. So another thing to keep your eye on in this run is coin management, because you're going to need roughly, depending on your route, somewhere between 900 and 1,000 coins throughout the course of this run, for various reasons. Mostly for buying moons. Well, you're actually going to need 1,000 no matter what. You might not use all the coins, but you're going to need 1,000 at some point, because there's another thing after you beat the game. Spoiler alerts, in the Mushroom Kingdom, you can talk to Toadette, and there will be a bunch of moons that she gives you based on things that you accomplished in the game. Anywhere from achieving world peace, okay, doing all the story moons, to collecting a certain amount of coins, to doing a certain number of 8-bit moons, all kinds of stuff. But one of the achievements that we get in this route is collecting 1,000 coins. So for the purposes of that, you will see these runners each get up to 1,000 coins throughout the course of the run. As Neo takes out Harriet, Luckless will collect this moon and start that fight himself. So behind by about one boss fight here. Luckless is. So now we'll see Neo move into the nighttime Sand Kingdom. Like I said, he's gonna be looking to achieve peace in this kingdom on the first visit. And that's gonna be true for every kingdom except for Wooded. The way the route works out, it's faster to clean up achieving peace in Wooded Kingdom on the second visit. For reasons we'll get to later. So you'll see him stop for all kinds of moons, such as this Slots moon. Along the way, just grabbing things when it is most convenient. You'll see in the top left corner, if you're familiar with any percent, it shows the number of moons required to progress to the next kingdom. You'll oftentimes see the runners go over that requirement on the first visit, just because it's more convenient to grab certain moons on the first visit as opposed to second. So since the end goal is getting 500 anyways, you know, you'll sometimes just wind up collecting extra ones than is required on the first visit. And just another little thing, talking to Jaxie there, you have to pay him 30 coins in order to use his services. It is a one-time fee, so runners are just paying him once, and they'll be able to utilize him to ride around the Sand Kingdom much faster than Mario can run or roll in the second visit. You get quite a bit of utilization out of him, so it's worth it to spend the time to pay for his services now. So Neo gonna go for some bullet bill tricks here. Jumping out into the open, putting himself at risk in order to capture this bullet bill a couple seconds faster. And collecting more coins here. Now Neo's actually going quite a bit out of his way to get a lot of coins early. It's not entirely necessary to do so, but perhaps he just wants to play it a little safe. Make sure he gets the coins he needs, so he doesn't have to worry about it throughout the entirety of the run. And he's going to come up on the first non-rabbit boss fight in the game. Knuckle attack. We're just going to make this big dummy hit himself in the face a few times. So Luckless once again coming in as Neo approaches the end of the fight Oh, he's gonna get stopped though. Lose a bit of time there. Oh, and Luckless landing on a little ledge below after doing I'm not quite sure what, but that was lucky he didn't die there. Both runners flubbing a little bit, but nothing too major. But yeah, Luckless is gonna once again enter this fight as Neo is finishing it up. So yeah, just a lot of things you have to set up early on in the run that will pay off for you later. And yet another one of those things is going to come up here on Neo's screen. You'll see him talk to this Toasterenin, who is kindly asking the taxi driver to be taken around to new places. He wants to see the sights. So talking to him there will make that tourist spawn in other kingdoms as we go through the run. And each time you talk to him in other kingdoms, he will give you a moon. Which I believe it's a total of 6 moons or so. So talking to him now will really pay off later. So a lot of stuff in Sand Kingdom really is just setting up for later on the first visit. But Neo is out of there. He'll be moving on. And I did not see, but I hope he picked a Wooded Kingdom first. And he did. Now this is just a small difference. Not actually making that big of an impact on the run, but picking Wooded Kingdom before Lake Kingdom just allows you to look at a hint art image later on where it is a bit quicker. So just a few second time save, not actually a big deal, but still nice to do. Might throw off your rhythm if you're doing kingdoms out of the order that you're used to. And an interesting thing about Wooded Kingdom, something you don't see in really any other speedrun of Super Mario Odyssey, is that when you get to Wooded, you go straight to the deep woods. We're going to get this sucker out of the way as early as possible. Not because it's annoying, but because it's actually fast to do so. So like I mentioned, Wooded is the one kingdom where we're going to achieve peace later on within the second visit. So since we're not getting all those story moons on the first visit, we kind of need some moons to make up for it. And the Deep Woods is an area that doesn't benefit from getting any extra moons from the moon rocks. So if we were to come down here now, we can get all the same moons that we would be able to get later on in the post game. So since we need extra moons and nothing's going to change down here to add fast moons, we may as well do it now. It's a place that it's very easy for runners to get lost in until you've done quite a few runs of this category. Because there's no, like, normally you can open your map and kind of see where you are, even just thinking from like a casual perspective. Have a good compass to see where things are. But in the Deep Woods, there's no map. You can't warp out of it. There's no compass telling you the direction of anything, so you really just have to rely on your memory and have a little, sort of an internal map in your head to tell yourself where things are. So very easy to get lost unless you really know what you're doing. But of course these runners, they are seasoned veterans. They know where they're going. No problem whatsoever. So the rest of this kingdom will just be riding a path up to the first boss fight, Spewer, of this kingdom. And then we'll head on out. So the reason it's faster to achieve peace on the second visit in this category is because the way we progress through the game in the post game is through war paintings. And for those who don't know, most kingdoms have 2 paintings in them. They have a painting that allows Mario to travel from another kingdom to that kingdom, and then a painting that allows you to travel from the kingdom you're in to another kingdom. So what that does, it creates a chain that you can travel, going from kingdom to kingdom utilizing these paintings. And the reason we would want to do that is not only because each painting has a moon right next to it, so traveling through those paintings is required to get most of those moons, but also it avoids the need to use the Odyssey to travel, which saves quite a bit of time because every time you use the Odyssey, you dump all of your moons that you collected in that kingdom, and a whole little cutscene plays and a lot of dialogue and such. So if you travel through the painting, none of that happens. It's just a quick little transition as you go through, and then you're on your way to the next kingdom. And in the case of Wooded Kingdom, the warp painting to get to Wooded Kingdom kind of spits you out right near the start of the second boss fight of this kingdom. So for that reason, we're just going to wait until later, come out of the painting and go right into the last boss fight. And then it will immediately spawn you at the Odyssey from there, which is close to the area where you need to break open the moon rock for Wooded Kingdom. So it all kind of just works out nicely that way and prevents us from having to backtrack up through Wooded Kingdom the second time on the first visit. So, Luckless trailing. Once again, not by a terrible amount of time. He's just going to have to climb this tower and fight Spirit. Finish off Wooded Kingdom. While Neo is on his way to Lake. I gotta say, I'm personally very excited for this tournament to unfold, because this is my favorite category of Super Mario Odyssey. Kind of has the best of everything. You get to see a lot of moons. You go pretty much everywhere in the game. But it's not overbearingly long, because it does take, unless you're the world record holder, to collect every moon in the game, it takes over 8 hours. But to collect 500 out of 880, which, is a good healthy chunk more than half of the moons, only 3.5 hours or less. So it's the most bang for your buck, in my opinion. And especially once you get to the post game, it feels like you're collecting a moon, every 5-10 seconds for the most part. So it's just constant action. There's very little downtime once you get past all the story cutscenes and such. So that's when the action really starts to heat up for me, is once we get to the Moon Kingdom, beat Bowser, and start plowing through the second visits of kingdoms. That's where it gets really exciting, and there's a lot going on. And that will be about an hour and a half into the run, give or take a few minutes. So Lake Kingdom is very short. There's not much difference between like the any percent route of Lake Kingdom and what you're seeing here for Darker Side. Just one moon out of order, and we're gonna have to look at a hint art. But otherwise, more or less the same. We're just gonna get in, get out. Achieving peace here is as simple as fighting Rango. So it's very quick kingdom. Nothing too thrilling going on here. So another one of those things that sets you up to collect moons later is looking at hint arts. You'll see Neo after this cutscene you'll notice that a staircase has spawned on the wall that he jumped over. And there's a picture on the wall. And looking at that picture spawns a moon, and it gives you a hint as to where the moon is. So that was a picture of Cascade Kingdom. So once Neo gets back to Cascade Kingdom later, he'll use that to his advantage to collect a really fast moon. And you'll see that in a lot of kingdoms. We'll be checking a hint art on the first visit and then collecting a lot of moons that might seem kind of random or out of place on the second visit. So now Neo will get into his first tussle with Bowser here. We'll try to make this quick and easy. And Luckless, meanwhile, is knocking Rango into the ground, wrapping up his Lake Kingdom visit shortly. So I mentioned that sometimes you'll go over the required moon count in given kingdoms, just because it's convenient to grab extra moons early on. But you'll also see the sort of thing where you might run directly past a moon on the first visit and don't collect it, because for various reasons it might be faster to collect it second visit. So if you see something as you're watching Darker Side run that looks really out of place, it probably has its reasons. There's a lot of moving parts with the route, just associated with collecting so many moons, that you wind up doing some stuff that looks rather strange, but actually is fast in the long run. So it's one of the challenges that comes with routing this kind of category, compared to shorter stuff like Any Percent and World Peace. But it's a fun challenge. So as Luckless heads into the Bowser fight here, you're going to see Neo utilize a Death Warp strat. He's going to collect this moon and just allow himself to fall into this pit of poison. There are a few instances in this route where just allowing yourself to die is faster than warping, because he wants to warp back up to the summit here to purchase this moon and access other parts of the kingdom anyway. And the cutscene of dying actually takes less time than the cutscene from warping. So that's actually another utilization of your coins, because every time you die, you lose 10 coins. So you have to be careful to be aware of how many coins you have when you're death warping, how many death warps you're able to do, and while still having enough coins to purchase everything that you can purchase. Neo going for a nifty little strat there, where he ground pounds that pillar and then positions himself in a way that the trapedal will still break the cage that previously sat on top of that stump. And he's going to die Death Warp once again right here to get back to the summit for a second time. That was intentional. Again, so that he can capture our friend Glydon here and get to this moon on the island. And Neo electing to cut out a rather risky moon from his route here. There is a moon that the intended way to grab it is to get a Tropical Wiggler and bring him all the way back to the beginning near the Odyssey of the kingdom. Oh, and Luckless is going to take an unintentional death there, so he's going to have to drop back down from the summit to get this 2D moon. Unfortunate. But yeah, as I was saying, it requires you to bring a Wiggler all the way across the kingdom and stretch around that corner in order to grab a key. And grabbing that key spawns a moon. But there's a strat you can do to position Glydon in a precise spot, throw your hat towards him, jump out as Mario and grab the key, and then home in your cap onto Glydon so that Mario warps back to safety on the platform right after he grabs the key, because otherwise he would drop into the poison and die. And it allows you to grab that moon in a very fast way, whereas doing it with the Wiggler is actually probably one of the slowest moons in the game. So it makes that moon viable for this category, but it's a very risky strat. So I don't expect to see many people, if anyone, really going for that in this tournament, because it's not a huge time save. If you replace it with a bit slower moon, it only loses you about 7 seconds at most, depending on how fast you can grab the key moon. So I would expect pretty much everyone to go for the safe strat of not getting that moon and just not risking the death, because if you die there, you wind up losing quite a bit of time. You lose more time for failing it than you would save by doing it successfully, so just a risk I expect to see people not take. So Neo coming to the Wiggler, everybody's favorite boss for sure. And I don't know, he's spraying shots like a madman. A little bit too early. Oh, it looks like Luckless might actually go for this strat that I was just talking about. So you can see him set up Glydon, and you see the punishment for it. It's awkward because you have to hold your hat out above Glydon and then dive out while still holding your hat. And it's a lot of buttons to press and a lot of precision involved, and Luckless is going to want no part of it after failing it once. I'd say a bold strategy, but you know, giving yourself one try at it isn't the worst thing in the world at the same time. Perhaps trying to give himself a bit of an advantage here. Oh no, and it looks like, oh, Neo barely cleans up the 2-cycle Wiggler. It was looking scary there for a second, but pulls it off. So he will collect his first multi-moon of Metro Kingdom. Now every kingdom's either going to have 1 or 2 multi-moons. The small kingdoms like Lake, like literally small in size, will typically have only 1 multi-moon. But ones like Metro that are very large, they added more story elements into them, so they're going to have 2 multi-moons to collect. So Neo collecting the first one, which will send him out of the darkness into daytime Metro Kingdom. So more seed planting from Neo as Luckless works his way towards City Hall and the treacherous climb. And in Sand Kingdom, we only planted 1 seed, but Metro, there are 2 pretty quick ones you can plant. So that's just more moons for later. Taking a more direct path to finish all the story moons here, because Metro Kingdom has the largest abundance of story moons, which makes sense because it also requires the most moons in order to progress through. So with the Wiggler, 4 musicians completing the sewer section and doing the festival, you wind up with a total of, I believe, 9 or 11 story moons, actually. Counting the multi-moons as 3. So yeah, 11 out of 20 moons you're going to see on this first visit are story moons, but we are actually going to collect 1 extra, so it'll be 11 out of 21. So Neo just going to progress through collecting all the musicians, gathering them up for the band, because every great festival needs a good band. So the top runners of this category will get times under 3.5 hours, and the really top-notch runners, small handful of people, are able to get under 3 hours and 20 minutes. And looks like Luckless cleaning up a pretty clean Wiggler himself. So Neo just collecting some fast moons along the way to the musicians in order to reach that 20 moon total that he needs. And he will check another hint card here with the nice long jump across from the railing over to the small ledge. A bit of a scary looking jump, but one that winds up very fast. Fastest way to get to this trumpeter here. And that will be the final musician for Neo. So now the issue is that there's a problem in the sewer, and it's cutting off the power supply. So Neo's gonna go take care of that real quick. And with me now, I'm no longer a solo commentator. We have the man, the legend, Dangers, joining us.
Good day. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. I was just saying earlier how excited I am for this tournament. We've got our first match here. So I'm just excited to get things kicked off. I don't know about you.
I absolutely am. I have my own match in this tournament coming up this week. So it's a very exciting tournament. Obviously, a little bit of a longer showcase of Super Mario Odyssey, but a very exciting. I would say the Darker Side is probably the objectively most successful, or like most complete category that this game has to offer. Definitely the most fun as well. So to see some of the more talented runners do this category will be very exciting indeed.
A treat. An absolute treat.
And hopefully I have not missed too much of the action. It looks like we're in Metro Kingdom right now.
Yes. Metro Kingdom. Luckless cleaning up the musician grind here while Neo fixes the sewers. So the sewers are actually kind of tricky. Neo had a pretty clean bit of movement there. It's very easy to die on your way over here. So,
important to note that the moon that's kind of in the sewer portion is quite a quick moon to grab. So we probably won't be seeing any of these runners going for some sewer clip ideas, just because it's kind of in the way. Anybody who's familiar with World Peace will know that it's kind of like any percent, but you're gathering a lot of the very quickest moons along the way, whereas Darker Side, we do kind of have to go out of our way for 500 moons, so the threshold for the timing on a lot of those moons is quite a bit higher. So you'll see them going out of their way for some moons. Actually, Neo, in his case, he's going to be going through the festival, and there is a secret portion coming up with a moon hiding in it that is very quick to grab.
Yeah, so that's Secret Moon. I always refer to World Peace as kind of Darker Side Light, because a lot of the first visits of Darker Side somewhat closely resemble the World Peace routing, but stuff like this is going to be where it differs. In World Peace, you would not go out of your way for this moon because the pipe transitions just make it slightly too slow. But in the case of Darker Side, 500 moons, it's a lot. So ones that are borderline for World Peace are almost always going to be working themselves into the routing for Darker Side.
Yeah, that is true. And I noticed you mentioning earlier, before I was able to hop in, that in certain cases there are places that you might even see Darker Side runners completely skip over moons. I think Metro is a very good example of that. As these guys are grabbing the bassist, they're actually just grabbing the checkpoint flag and then talking to the bassist immediately, and you might think, well, there's a fast moon right there, what are they doing? But you'll actually see that is part of a development when they make a revisit to the Metro Kingdom. That moon kind of it kind of combines itself well with some other ones in the revisit that you can't get the first time around.
That's kind of the moon I had in mind when I was discussing that. But yeah, later on there's a moon that a dog will dig up for you, but you kind of have to wait on him. He's a little slow. So you have to wait. You have to lead him to the spot where the moon is and wait for him to dig it up. But so in the meantime, while you're waiting, it's faster to just grab that moon at that point rather than doing it on the first visit. So a lot of weird stuff like that in the Darker Side route. That
Absolutely.
might be unintuitive at first.
Yeah, and now Neo has finished up the festival, nice and clean, no major issues there. He's going to be making one quick pit stop over to this tourist here.
Yeah, so I did explain this in Sand Kingdom. This is the first instance that we'll see this tourist, and you see he gets a moon from it. Every time we see him throughout the rest of the run, he'll have a moon for us. So a good friend, you might say.
A very nice little companion to have on our giant adventure around the kingdoms. Something to note about the tourist, I'm not sure if it was already mentioned, however, the tourist makes a predetermined route through the kingdoms. He has a couple of different stops, but you have to activate his stops in order for him to work. So you couldn't, for example, just get him directly from Metro. That's why we had to talk to him in Sand first. If we were to miss the tourist in Metro, he wouldn't appear at his next destination later on in the game. So it's very important that you kind of continue this journey along with the tourist in order, or else you can ruin a couple of very fast moons for yourself along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just another one of those things. When I first started running Darker Side, that was a question I had. I was like, why are we coming after the festival and grabbing this tourist really far out of the way when we run right past this area later on the second visit? Yeah, for that reason exactly. You do have to collect those moons in a predetermined order. He has the tourist has a strict travel itinerary, and you will not stray from it.
Indeed, and when one of the stops is on the moon, I suppose you kind of have to be a little bit strict on your scheduling for these kinds of things.
Yeah, I suppose, getting on a ship that will take you all the way that far out might be a little difficult, so can't say I blame him there.
All right, and the next stop we have here is the Snow Kingdom. Kind of like the other detour in the road earlier, we have to choose wooded first for some hint art specific reasons, but this time it actually is beneficial for us to go to snow first.
Yeah, and this choice actually doesn't make a difference either way as far as the route goes. It's just snow is the default option to pick first, so that's what we do.
Yeah, makes sense.
Neo doesn't look like he's even going for the moon clip there. There is a way to clip through the wall, and I know it's fast for World Peace, but optimally I actually believe it's slower for Darker Side, because in order to do that clip you would need to do this room with the Goombas beforehand, which takes you a little bit more out of your way. So Neo electing for the more optimal route, and I expect to see him go for downstairs snow clip with the roll cancel.
Yeah, if you are very confident in your abilities in the moon clip, then I would suggest maybe going for this room first anyways, because especially if you're on 1.2, there is still a time loss to be considered with the attempts that you have to take at this this roll cancel clip, as it is probably the hardest in this current route, especially if you go downstairs.
So there are two major ways to clip in this game overall, and we're kind of mentioning both of them. Moon clipping, any moon that's near a wall or ceiling, as it spawns, you can kind of grab it in a precise... And Neo gets first try downstairs clip. Why would we doubt him? He's just making us look bad over here.
That is definitely the most optimal thing that he could have done right there.
But yeah, with any moon that's near a wall or a ceiling, if you grab it in a particular way and throw your cap at a precise time, the moon can kind of push you out of bounds. And with that moon up on the balcony, there is one of the moons where such a thing is possible. But then you saw Neo, what he did there was a roll cancel clip. So basically just ground pounding and rolling and immediately canceling your roll near certain walls with weird hitboxes can also push you out of bounds. So yeah, a very impressive first try clip from Neo. That is one of the more difficult roll cancel clips on this version of the game.
Making it look incredibly easy. I find that one, especially on 1.2, it tends to be a bit of a roulette. The game kind of just lets you go through when it feels like it. You can do the same thing, or at least you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, and sometimes it just doesn't work.
Alright, chat, and it's not too late. You can still get your Bound Bull guesses in as Neo goes through the first lap here. Guess his time that he will get.
And I know that Neo is very seasoned in Darker Side, and I have no doubt in his Bound Bull abilities. What do you think, Kerbis?
I don't know. I'm gonna roll with a solid 54, I think. 54.21.
Oh, dang. Right to the decimals. Let's see. I think we're going to see him get... Oh, he took a little bit of a stumble there, so that might affect my guess. But a 53.84, let's say.
Yeah, you always got to go for the decimal guesses. If you guess full seconds, then that's just a cop out.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy way to go.
57.08. So that little tumble in the deep patch of snow probably cost him a bit there. But we'll see if anyone in the chat got a little closer than we did.
Yep, he did take a little bit of a tumble there, coming in a little bit slower than we perhaps expected, but still a very commanding lead in this race so far. Very good times in Bound Bull are somewhere in the 52 range. You'll see some very top-level players get on consistent basis, 52, 53.
Yeah, I think 52 is the best I've ever seen in a full game speed run.
Yeah. Some people who do like specific RTA of just the Bound Bull, they can get times of like 49, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure where those times come from. I'm not sure what it is that they do to make that happen, but it's apparently possible.
It's pretty wild because I've watched video of those, and they save almost an entire second just on the first lap compared to like what a lot of us Darker Side runners can do. So it's pretty wild that they can do that, but obviously it's not something that's going to be consistent. You have to cut the corners really close and do some risky things to get that kind of Bound Bull time. So you don't see people play it too risky, but the consistent 52s and 53s is where a lot of people kind of settle in. You'll see Luckless is going to go for the moon clip here. We'll see if he gets it.
Setup looks okay, but it doesn't look like he's going to be in the wall there, so he's going to have to go downstairs now.
Yeah, so the good thing about going for that is it's a quick setup, and you try it once, and if it doesn't work, then you have the roll cancel clip to fall back on. So we did only do the roll cancel clip for the longest time. Moon clipping wasn't discovered until a few months back. So many runners were already used to doing these roll cancel clips, so them kind of being relegated to a backup, it's a good backup to have. It would be unfortunate if we had to try the moon clip and then just kind of reset the run if we didn't get it, because it wastes so much time.
That is very true.
It should be mentioned that This roll cancel clip does save multiple minutes, because otherwise we would have to go through all 4 of these tunnels and collect the moon at the end of them in order to open the 4 barrier walls to get down to the bound bowl. And that includes collecting moon shards for a moon. It includes fighting Rango for a moon. And Luckless does finally get down there. So we can go ahead and get your bound bowl guesses in for Luckless's race as well. Yeah, all of those things wind up saving multiple minutes because we can come back into that room later on, such as the Rango room. And after you achieve peace, the game kind of just assumes that Rango's been beaten even if you never actually fought him. So you can just collect, his moon is just sitting there for you to grab later.
Yeah, that's what makes doing those rooms later on so much faster. It is kind of important to note that the sequence break in this game does really help us out as far as making everything faster. Achieving world peace here opens up a lot of moons that are much faster afterwards, so that's why we tend to kind of go about doing the clip. Same thing can be said for sand as well. Going out of your way to kind of do the story is an incredibly slow way of getting all of those moons, so we do them kind of out of order. Not any of the other kingdoms, for some reason, do not allow us to do any of these kinds of sequence breaks. It's only the Sand Kingdom and the Snow Kingdom. You'll see that that is why Neo here is actually going around Seaside, collecting all of these story moons and pressing all of the buttons in order to activate the boss in this area, because there is no way for us to kind of break the sequence like there is in Sand or in Snow.
Yeah, and in the case of Snow Kingdom, we skipped story moons, but we wound up going back for them later, like all the ones we skipped. But in the case of Sand Kingdom, there's actually one story moon that we just never get. There's the moon on top of the tower, which we do collect later because we run right past it and it's super fast. But there's another moon after that that you're supposed to do before having access to the pyramid, which is collecting some moon shards. And generally, when you have to collect moon shards, it's not going to be the fastest thing in the world. And the ones in Sand Kingdom in particular are spread out pretty far. So that moon winds up being really slow, and so we just leave it out entirely, and the game doesn't know any better.
Yep, handy for us. I think there is another. We do get the other story moon in Sand, though. We get the one on top of the tower, and we get them out of order. In fact, we beat Harry at first and then go back to the tower. That serves a couple of different purposes, because there is a wire that handily takes us right to the top of the tower, so we don't need to do any sort of 2D climbing through the tower to get it, which is very handy. And also, it eliminates the cutscene involved with spawning the moving platforms afterwards. So by breaking the sequence, we're tricking the game into thinking things are already done, and it just kind of works out for us as speedrunners.
Exactly, and you saw Neo, he almost lost his Gushin there. Seaside Kingdom has a cool route where you utilize this Gushin pretty much across the entire thing. It allows you to get from place to place really fast, but you gotta be careful to not lose him. He almost dropped him up on the higher up ledge before collecting that story moon, and that probably would have meant that he was not able to get it. But he caught himself, fumbled with the Gushin again, grabbing that ground pound moon, but he's still out here, flying through the skies.
Yeah. Just like Sand Kingdom uses the bullet bills to their kind of maximum efficiency, we see that Seaside Kingdom in Darker Side actually uses these Gushins in some creative and unique ways. So making sure when you grab story moons that we keep the Gushin a certain distance away in order to preserve him. If you have him too close to this story moon as you collect it, he will actually just disappear. So you'll notice that he was purposefully leaving the Gushin a certain distance away in order to reuse him later. Also, using checkpoints, power moons, those kinds of things. If you are in a Gushin and you capture those things with the Gushin, they actually refill the water. So some very creative and interesting ways of using this Gushin to get around the kingdom very quickly.
Exactly, and Neo coming up on my favorite boss fight in the game. He's gonna go ahead and have a tussle with the Brigadier, or full name Gotta put some respect on it. Brigadier, Mollusk Lancer are the 3rd offhand above lane. That
Respect
is
be
his
to him.
official canonical name. You can look it up, I'm not lying.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody would be able to come up with something like that otherwise.
Yeah, I couldn't make that up. That's for sure.
Yeah, and this boss fight here, more or less, is down to memory. It can be very frustrating for beginning runners because if you don't know where he stops and where he goes, it can be quite a bit slower than Neo is making it look at this particular moment. But Neo, obviously having done this many, many times, knows exactly where he's going to be, initiating a bit of a sequence break in the boss's AI there, making him clip through the hot springs in order to get a very fast hit for the final go there, ground pounding into the boss and initiating this final cutscene before we leave Seaside.
Yeah, so that boss has he has predetermined spots in the kingdom that he'll stop. So just knowing what those spots are and utilizing them to your advantage can make that fight really, really fast. And the clip is just a positionally dependent thing that allows him to get to one of those spots that he would stop faster rather than traveling around the entire island. So Luckless uncorking his first seal here. Oh, and you can tell he's playing on Joy-Cons because he pulled out the cheeky down throw strat there. Mid-air down throws aren't actually possible on Pro controllers. So whenever you see someone do a strat like that, you know they're playing with Joy-Cons.
All right, Luckless here, grabbing that checkpoint before continuing on. You know, a lot of darker side early game has a lot to do with setting up for later on. That checkpoint's going to be very useful as it's kind of a vantage point in the kingdom. And we see Neo here actually on his way out of Seaside, on his way to Luncheon. And Luncheon, just like all the other categories in this game, can be a very frustrating kingdom if you don't know what you're doing. Kitten agrees on that one for sure.
Yeah, Kitten doesn't like Luncheon. Makes her too hungry.
Yeah. Just gotta go for some crunchies after.
So yeah, we'll see if Luckless can keep his Gushin all the way through Seaside here, much like Neo was able to. There's a lot of nuance behind this because there's stuff such as if you leave the Gushin too close to Captain Toad will be too scared to talk to you. So you have to leave him right on the edge there so that Toad doesn't notice him and you can still get the moon. And then you can recapture the Gushin. And, you know, as you mentioned earlier, dangers, just keeping it far enough away from the story moons that they don't despawn.
Yeah, and leaving that checkpoint uncapturable so that you can use it to refill your water after you've pounded the ground pound spot here.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't have enough fuel to make it around the corner to the next moon.
Yep.
So yeah, just a lot of intricacies with keeping this Gushin throughout the entire kingdom. Neo quickly dispatches of Speward for the 2nd time. Will need to work his way through Luncheon Kingdom.
And of course, usually the refights have some sort of interesting additional mechanic. This one, the arena is rectangular, which, I mean, doesn't really do anything in the case of speedrunning, because we don't really let him move anywhere.
Yeah, the second fights, they did a decent job of making them somewhat more interesting, but yeah, just changing the shape of the arena only really affects you if you mess up, which don't typically ever see anyone mess up that fight to that extent, for the most part. So a nice little triple jump over this gap for Neo.
Another very good example of, hey, you just passed a bunch of power moons. What are you doing, Neo? Yeah, rolling through town and kind of activating the story as quickly as possible is going to give us access to a lot of the setup that is required for the Luncheon Kingdom. So making our way very quickly through, making sure we grab the checkpoint in town before continuing along with the story here. And there are a couple of moons that we're going to get before we traverse this Meat Plateau, I think it's called.
Yes, and Neo not taking a liking to that pan bro. He just decides to bop him before he went and collected that story moon. And you will
I don't
notice
blame him.
that those guys are not hammer bros. They're throwing frying pans. So just another nice little intricacy of this game. The kingdom-specific enemies. I think it's kind of funny.
I love it. You know, you got to appreciate that they're staying on theme. And we've already seen some flinging pylons in the Metro Kingdom, and it's kind of funny to see that the same concept is brought to the Luncheon Kingdom, but they're actually just forks stuck in the wall. Just a couple of very cute and interesting elements to this kingdom, and probably one of the reasons that I enjoy it the most out of any other.
As a speedrunner, I really do not like Luncheon Kingdom because there's just a lot of weird stuff that happens, but thematically, I love that kingdom because just all kinds of stuff like that. Plus, the actual music for the kingdom, they literally use kitchen utensils for some of the background sounds. So I just love what they did with this kingdom. But playing it, not as much fun.
Yeah, as a casual, I really enjoyed it. I think that some of the sub areas are very challenging and fun. But yeah, as a speedrunner, of course, being able to kind of manipulate the game in a way where we do it the absolute fastest can sometimes be frustrating, especially in these trickier elements. You saw the Neo made very quick work of that lava bubble sub area, making it look incredibly easy, but I can tell you from personal experience that learning it is not the easiest at all.
And Neo's going to go ahead and collect the most difficult multi-moon in the game, where all you have to do is twitch a giant slab of meat that you transform into, and bird will drop you into the pot and you can grab a multi-moon. So very, very difficult stuff here.
Yep, the easiest multi-moon in the game. Basically just sitting out in the open for you. A very handy moon to grab in a situation where you just need quick moons. That's why it is part of the any percent route. It also spits you right back out at the Odyssey, which is handy. In this category, though, we don't actually want to be there. We are looking to do a little bit of setup in the Luncheon Kingdom before we have to revisit later on. So you're going to see Neo transporting back to the Meat Plateau platform, looking at a hint art on his way back into town. And that, again, is just for a little bit of setup later on.
Yeah, so the way this visit works in this kingdom is the first half we kind of traverse our way through the right side of the kingdom because that's where the first multi-moon is, and then the second half we work our way through the left side of the kingdom, as that's where the second multi-moon will be, or at least the path to get to the second multi-moon.
Yeah, and Luncheon Kingdom in specifics is very, very different as you kind of progress through the sequences. Some platforms rise, some fall, some disappear completely. You'll actually notice that one of the checkpoints along the way is inaccessible as of the second sequence. That's why we have to teleport all the way up to the Meat Plateau rather than just like kind of the halfway point. They actually eliminate that checkpoint for this particular sequence of the game until you've beat the boss in here. And
it's actually two checkpoints that go away temporarily. It's the one right in town, and then the one on the path to the Meat Plateau. Yeah. So yeah, I think Luncheon Kingdom is the one that changes the most throughout completing all the story elements. Neo actually missed both fireballs there. He's trying to bait this piranha plant into spitting fireballs at these torches. Having a little bit of trouble, but he finally gets them lit. As he drops down to 1 health, he's going to bounce right into this moon, luckily, to restore his health. It's a bit of a sticky situation, but he walks away from it without a death, at the very least.
Yeah, saving a little bit of time from the worst case scenario, I would say. The alternative for that moon is to actually capture the fire piranha, which requires throwing a rock into him. Technically the slower option of the two. It is kind of a neat little mechanic that, you know, as a casual player, I never would have even noticed or, you know, been able to pick out. And that is when those piranha plants spit out a fireball, you can actually use Cappy to kind of boost it from behind and make it go a little bit faster, which is really an interesting mechanic.
Yeah, exactly. And from a raw timing perspective, it is actually slower to capture the piranha plant. But since one of those achievement moons that I was talking about earlier, one of them is to actually obtain a certain number of captures, and that is one we collect in this route. So because of that, it winds up being most efficient to capture that Piranha Plant as one of your captures that are required, which the total is, I believe, 30 or 40.
Something in the ballpark of that.
It's
for
either
sure.
30 or 40, I don't quite remember, but yeah, it's actually very tight. We pretty much get the exact number that we need throughout this route, so that is actually one of the optimal ones to get, but not everybody elects to do so, because it's much easier to grab that moon with just hitting the fireballs with your cap.
Indeed. And so that does eliminate one of the captures from the list of captures that we need in order to get that Toadette moon at the end, but we can compensate for that by capturing another moon along the way. Or sorry, not another moon, another capture along the way. There are a couple of other captures that are not entirely necessary for power moons, but they are just kind of sitting there, so we can use those to our advantage.
Yeah, so long as you're aware of which captures you're going to get and knowing that you have the correct amount, it doesn't make too big of a difference. A lot of situations can be handled in a few different ways. So Neo's going to be on his way out of Luncheon Kingdom with 124 moons, which normally is how many you would need to just beat the game in general. And we still have 3 kingdoms to go, so that shows you just there's quite an abundance of extra moons that we wind up collecting in these first visits.
And quite an abundance of moons that are available just regardless. There is a category in this game called the All Moons No Post Game category, which is essentially the most extended any percent that you can think of. You go out of your way to collect all of the available power moons that do not exist in the post game. So any moon that you are able to collect before leaving that final wire is in this category. So I think the number for that is somewhere in the ballpark of like 460 or something like that.
It's 462.
There you go.
So yeah.
Which is just short of what it would require to get to Darker Side. That being said, there are a lot of very quick moons in the post game, so it is beneficial for us in this category to get all the way to the post game.
Yeah, there's actually quite a large number of moons that are available in the early game that we never wind up collecting, just because they are a lot slower than the moons that become available in the post game.
Yep, that is the truth.
So there's some good differences between the routes of those two categories, which makes it interesting.
Absolutely. Definitely gives some variety to the different categories, even though the number of moons is relatively the same.
Yeah, because All Moons So Post Game technically gets less moons, but it's forced to collect a lot of the slower ones that are available early game. It actually winds up being the longer category of the two.
We see Neo here in the Ruined Kingdom. One of the few kingdoms in this route that we actually do not revisit. However, there is one very quick moon available to us in the very beginning. You'll notice that Neo grabbed a treasure chest hidden underneath the stairs before actually coming to this boss. Actually creates an element of suspense in Ruined Kingdom, which we usually do not see in other categories, because he attempts a trick that we've very, very humbly named Neodram, which involves a jump from collecting that moon up to the top platform in a very treacherous way, involving a cap return jump.
But of course, the creator of the strat himself got it with no trouble whatsoever.
Indeed, yeah.
You know, I didn't see, but I'm going to assume that Neo asserted his 1.2 dominance during that fight and collected the Captain Toad hint art.
Yes, I think that's fair to assume.
One benefit of playing on the current version of the game is there are the hint arts that have been gradually released that each give you 200 coins, and collecting that one during the fight, the dragon fight, actually costs you no time at all. So it's a free 200 coins that you aren't able to get if you're playing on the 1.0 version of the game, which just helps you get to that 1,000 that you need. Oh, Neo is on 1.0 actually. I always forget that. Neo, a former 1.2 runner.
Has joined the dark side in favor of some time-saving tricks available, including first moon skip. But that being said, 1.2 definitely does have the advantage of being more lenient, especially when it comes to coins, as well as playing on digital does give you an advantage load-wise, and in a category that is 3.5 hours long, it actually does make rather a difference.
So, as the commentators kick themselves for forgetting, that also explains how Neo got first try downstairs clip.
Ah, yes.
No, because that is also much easier on 1.0. So, perhaps we made Neo look a little bit better than he actually is. We hyped him up for no reason.
Yeah. Still to be said that the clips are not entirely free on 1.0. We have seen some, especially in the World Peace Tournament that just happened.
Yeah,
we have seen some slip-ups, but definitely much easier on 1.0 than they are on 1.2.
Yeah, they could still be messed up for quite a few tries, but a first try snow clip is much more common on 1.0 than 1.2. So maybe we'll see Luckless assert his 1.2 dominance then.
Yep.
And yeah, the moon that Neo grabbed with stacking up the Goombas at the beginning of Bowser's Kingdom here, that is not in the normal route for him. That's a backup because he elected to not grab that key moon in Lost Kingdom.
Right, and this one being just a little bit slower. It used to be in the regular route, but has been subbed out in place of some other quicker moons, especially TNT. We might not see TNT very much in this tournament. It is kind of a riskier strategy.
Yeah, we saw Luckless go for it once, and then he failed it and elected to just warp to the Odyssey and cut his losses.
Right.
I think you might see that a few times. Might see people give it one try and not take it any further than that, because you can get stuck on that for quite a while if you're committed to actually getting it. But yeah, there's a small handful of moons that are really borderline as far as being fast enough for the route, and it winds up creating a lot of good backup moons in case you miss something throughout the run, which does happen.
Yep,
Thankfully, some of the much faster moons that aren't in the route actually wind up being convenient to grab towards the end of the run as well, which is a nice thing.
Indeed.
Because, you know, people do forget moons, especially in a race setting. If you get towards the end and realize you forgot something, it can be very nice to have something waiting for you towards the end of the game that you can make up for it with. It doesn't lose you too much time.
Notably, we originally had a couple of 2D moons that were towards the end of the route, and we've recently noticed that by subbing in a particular 2D area in Seaside, we're able to bang off of our 2D moons achievement for Toadette, while also kind of cutting in some time for 2D areas in general. So if you have discovered that towards the end of the route you are short on moons, you can actually go about getting one of those dropped out 2D moons as a replacement.
Yeah, there's a lot of intricacies to routing this kind of category, because not only are there a lot of moons that are very close to being fast enough to make it in, but you also have all of these Toadette achievements to consider when you're adding or dropping moons from the route. So, for instance, some of the 2D moons that we collect on their own would actually be too slow for this route, but because collecting 10 2D moons gets you another moon, if you average them all out together, it makes those moons worth it, essentially. So there's a lot to consider, and if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to add this moon in and take this moon out because I don't like this moon, well, if you take the moon out that you don't like, it might be affecting an achievement, so you might actually be cutting out 2 moons unintentionally. So if you're trying to come up with backup strats, you have to be really careful of what you take out.
Yeah, you really do have to make sure that you're not eliminating 2 moons by accident in certain situations. Now we see Neo is approaching this brutal refight, and in the case of Darker Side, we actually are refighting Harriet and Topper both. In any percent, we actually don't bother with Harriet at all the first visit through sand, but this being a refight, she does have 2 bombs that she throws at us instead of just the 1, so you kind of have to angle yourself in a way that it hits the bomb back properly rather than just having it fly off in a random direction.
And Neo making that look easy. Man of culture and going for Topper first, Harriet second.
Yep. A point of contention for some Super Odyssey runners. The original kind of idea was to do the one that was on the left first, but Neo opting to do Topper first, which has some benefits. I would say the Topper is the easier one to take damage in, so if for some reason that you do take damage to Topper, you can actually use the checkpoint flag to heal yourself, though in Darker Side, I think we make an effort to actually grab the checkpoint flag first, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. You could leave it for in between for that reason, though.
That is true. And there is another checkpoint flag shortly afterwards that you could grab instead, but another thing to keep in mind is that checkpoint flags are a toted achievement in themselves, so making sure that you grab the correct amount of checkpoint flags along your way is also an important thing to take into consideration.
Yeah, and I know personally that's a tough one because there are some checkpoints that I will get on certain runs, but sometimes I'll miss them, and it's not really a great idea to go back for it. So I tend to get a couple extra checkpoints as I run, just in case. Because there actually are more checkpoints in your way directly than you even need. So
yes.
It's convenient because you're able to get extras without really losing any time at all.
Yeah, considering we do go through the warp painting chain, every single warp painting exit has a checkpoint flag associated with it. In fact, some runners will opt to not even grab those checkpoints just because they can be kind of out of the way of the moon associated with them. But if you want to be safe, spending the half a second to grab it is usually a good strategy to take, especially when you're starting this category out.
For sure. That's what I always tell beginner runners of this category, just to grab every warp painting checkpoint to be safe, because you don't want to be worrying about getting the proper amounts for achievements while you're still trying to learn the route in general. But yeah, that's a thing. As you become more experienced, you can cut out, you can learn which ones are slow to grab and cut them out in favor of other fast checkpoints. So Neo approaching the final boss fight of Bowser's Kingdom.
The Robo Brood, which, of course, is very scary, especially in a on the moon.
And Neo going for left side.
Very interesting.
No, I actually, from watching like the World Peace Tournament and such, a lot of really high-level runners, I actually haven't seen left side Robo Brood in quite a while. I don't know if he normally does this in runs, or if he does right side and just feels a little bit safer doing this. Doesn't want to take the time loss of falling off. Could also be the case.
Yeah, very interesting strategy, and I'm not sure if one is any faster than the other, to be fair. It does require a little bit of a different
slightly
setup.
Faster.
Right side is faster.
Can actually be multiple seconds faster if you go for the fastest strats, such as Harriet third.
Indeed, yep.
But left side works just as well for a race setting like this. You know, if you're more consistent at it, it's more comfortable for you. Not gonna affect you too much. You know, strats like that might lose a couple seconds. In any percent, they can be really big in a high level any percent race, but As far as Darker Side goes, it's much more about your overall consistency. So you can do all things that are just going to work for you every time, and you're probably going to benefit from it more so than trying to do everything as optimally as possible.
Yeah, consistency is the name of the game. In a long category, you want to make sure you're not spending too much time dying or retrying certain things, because those are what are going to add up the most. If you lose maybe like a second or two doing kind of the slower strats in order to progress through the game quicker, then you will probably end up getting a better time as a result.
So Neo now going to advance to the Moon Kingdom after collecting his Fence Post Moon. So he is fastly approaching the post game here, which, as I said earlier, that is where, in my opinion, the true action of this category starts. You're going to see the pace pick up quite a bit. There are almost no cutscenes throughout the rest of the run once you get past Moon Kingdom. So
Yes, that is true.
All gameplay here on out.
Every time you go through a painting, there is a tiny little cutscene that is skippable associated with it, but really no room for breaks at all. The only break I can think of in the early post-game being achieving world peace in Wooded Kingdom, which is something that we actually skip out on doing the first time around, just because the war painting drops us very close to the top of Wooded Kingdom, which allows us to get to the boss very easily.
So Neo looks like, as of now, he's on either high 129 or low 130 pace for completing the main story of the game, which is pretty good, I would say.
Quite commendable, yeah.
I think sub 130 is a time that a lot of people kind of strive for, and not many can achieve. So a pretty solid run for Neo thus far. We'll see if he has any trouble with Moon Kingdom zero gravity shenanigans.
Capturing that bunny flawlessly.
There's a lot of cool little strats to do here. I personally don't like the zero gravity, but it does allow for some interesting things to be done. There's a lot of rocket flowers here as well, which Neo will try to utilize in order to run through this kingdom much quicker.
Now Neo setting up a triple jump over these pillars, very precise jump to be taken, allowing him to get all the way across this chasm to this treasure chest. Missing a jump like that can result in a death very easily, so being very lucky to get it. Also, taking a little bit of a boost off of the platform there by accident. Just going to set himself up with these rocket flowers again.
Yeah, I think that was a smart play going back for the rocket flowers, because not having them is going to slow you down quite a bit. So taking the couple seconds to go back for them probably gets him to the Sphinx here quicker than he otherwise would have.
Yes,
so
I would agree.
Heads up play from Neo. And it looks like a first try moon skip, no problem. Neo.
Very solid.
Has Luckless traversing his way, about to start the climb up to the top of Bowser's Kingdom after he collects these two quick moons here.
They are just a tiny bit out of the way, but again, this is kind of... We do make one revisit to Bowser's Kingdom, collecting a couple of moons as we kind of traverse the kingdom, but these ones are actually kind of right in our way as we go about climbing up the first time, so he's going to just grab those right now.
And that Captain Toad moon is actually one that we used to get second visit, because there was a timer challenge that brought you down right next to him, but that timer challenge is one that has been cut out of the route for being just a bit too slow. So we instead moved Captain Toad to the first visit here in order to cut out that entire section of movement on the second visit. It's a little faster overall. So Neo starting his second Bowser fight, collecting the hat just a little bit too early, so he's going to have to chase Bowser around the arena here.
An unfortunate misstep, but not one that's going to cost too much time in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Again, not a big deal. If those are the biggest kind of mistakes that you're making, then you're gonna wind up with a pretty good run at the end of the day.
And We see Luckless on the right side, approaching the Robo Brood fight now. Just grabbing one quick moon along the way. This moon hidden on Bowser's nose before making his way up. And something to be noted is that this particular point in the run is actually probably like 1/3 of the way through. This can be a very nerve-wracking experience when you are doing a run such as World Peace or any percent, because we are so close to the end. This is kind of the final hard part that Luckless is approaching here, but in Darker Side, this is still just kind of the beginning. We're still in the setup phase. There's still a lot to be done. So I find that the nerves do not hit me nearly as bad when I get here in a Darker Side run versus when I get here in a World Peace run, which can be a good thing.
Luckless bonking on the face of the rabbit, of the Robo Brood, and having the awareness to not fall off. Good stuff from him.
Yep,
Yeah,
some weird textures.
I definitely agree with that sentiment. Going through that Bowser fight and this escape sequence, when you're on PB pace and any percent of World Peace where the run is ending here, it's just entirely nerve-wracking. But in Darker Side, it's just like, whatever, I'm barely paying attention.
Yeah. It can definitely help make this fight a little bit easier if the nerves are not so high. Luckless taking a tumble on his initial climb up the Robo Brood, but making it rather easy afterwards. You see Neo approaching this here escape sequence. Again, another rather nerve-wracking part of the route, but we are only about 1/3 of the way through, so perhaps not affecting the nerves as much. Doesn't mean that 2D skip is any easier than it is otherwise, but making it look rather simple there.
So yeah, you can always, I always tell how fast a run is based on what time they start this pillar section. So Neo starting it at a low 129 time. It usually takes about a minute, a little less if you get the early pillar. So we can look to see him finishing any percent with right around what I said, high 129, low 130 kind of pace. So a pretty clean Moon Kingdom from there, as well as a pretty clean early game overall. He does get the early pillar, so Neo having a very good run so far by anyone's standards. We'll see if he can carry that momentum into the post game, where things get a little trickier.
Absolutely. And again, very little downtime available to you in the post game, not very many breaks. So the pace is a lot more fast paced. You're doing a lot more, you're kind of always on the go, always have to be knowing where you're going next without being able to take a moment to think. So,
and I find that it kind of sometimes makes your mistakes compound a little easier in the post game.
Most certainly, yep.
For that very reason, there's not much downtime to compose yourself if things start to go south. So it can kind of turn into a spiral, a downward spiral. So unfortunately, we don't get to watch the great ending cutscene. We're just gonna have to skip through it in order to power our way into the post game. As Luckless is gonna start his Moon Kingdom adventures here. We'll see if he has any trouble with this bunny.
The Moon Kingdom in this run is about 6.5 minutes approximately, so kind of gives you a good gauge of how far these runners are. Neo being one of the most seasoned Darker Side runners, a very active router in the community for this category as well. So it does not surprise me that he's able to leave the early game with a time of sub 130, which is kind of what you shoot for as a commendable time in this category, I would say.
Luckless is chasing that rabbit around for quite a while, but he does finally collect that moon there. But that's one of the rabbits that I think if you miss, becomes one of the most annoying ones to chase after.
Certainly, yeah. There is no real running animation for the rabbit, hopping around the entire time, which can be a little bit frustrating because he will not stop and give you the moon until he's back on the ground. So now we might see some differences in the routes here in Mushroom Kingdom. some runners may opt to do this castle section immediately after planting the seeds and doing the setup, whereas there are a couple of moons that you can do in Mushroom Kingdom, and some runners choose to do them earlier, some choose to do them later.
Yeah, as well as getting this tiles moon that you see Neo going for, and the light in the ceiling. A lot of these moons in Mushroom Kingdom can be done either first or second visit, and there's not too much of a time difference. The bigger implication is how you manage your total moon counts for each time you dump moons into the Odyssey to minimize announcements stating that you've unlocked new outfits, because that happens a lot in the post game. So it's all about total moon counts. Just another sort of intricate thing. It's hard to get a grasp on unless you have a good understanding of the route for Darker Side.
And those particular moons that he just grabbed, the one in the ceiling, the tiles moon, sometimes, depending on what route you're doing, depending on what moons you're getting, sometimes leaving that tiles moon can be an option for a backup moon in the situation where you might be short one. So it might, if you're a beginning runner, it might be beneficial to kind of leave that one to the end in case you're missing one, depending on what route you're doing again.
Yeah, because it is another moon that is very borderline. Not, one of the slowest ones in the route, realistically. So, and that's if you're doing it optimally. So if you're not getting the tiles as fast as you possibly can be, it suddenly becomes a slow moon. So yeah, it can be one that is best left up as a backup, at least at first.
As far as I know, it is part of the existing Darker Side route as one of the fastest moons.
Yeah. So here you'll see the fast pace already. Neo's going to talk to Captain Toad in the middle of collecting these nodes in order to not waste any time. And having some trouble rolling down the hill here. Not getting the optimal line.
Just an unfortunate mistake. As long as you collect all the notes before they disappear, you'll be okay still.
Yeah, that's one of the more punishing notes moons to miss at the end as well, because there are 3 sections of notes that you have to collect. So you have to, if you miss the last one, you have to go all the way back to the beginning and start it over again.
Yeah, rather unforgiving.
And right here, Neo opened his first moon rock. So these are the things that are going to spawn a lot of really fast moons into the kingdom, into each kingdom. And they are the reason that we get world peace in this category, because you are not able to open those unless you achieve peace in that kingdom.
Yeah, and like we mentioned before, a lot of post-game moons, like this one in particular, is just sitting out in the open very fast to collect. And it makes it worth it for us to go out of our way to open those moon rocks in the first place.
Yeah, so you're now seeing a mix of moons that were available before, such as this fishing moon, and new ones, such as the one on top of the fishing pond, that are just done well when done consecutively. So that is the reason why moons like this one may have been skipped first visit in favor of doing them now, because they just run into the path of the post-game moons a little better. But there are areas that you'll see the runners go through first and second visit, just because you do have to get a certain number of moons first visits. You have to go some places.
Yeah.
And sometimes fast moons spawn in those places as well, so unavoidable in some situations.
Yeah, another good kind of going back to the Metro Kingdom example with the bassist. In order to progress the story, we do have to talk to the bassist, but we do leave that kind of lost in the rubbish moon alone. But we do return to the commemorative park afterwards in order to collect that moon, as well as another couple of quick ones that do appear in the post-game.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you have to go to that area in order to unlock the post-game moons, but then you have to go back to that area to collect some of the post-game moons. So yeah, just forced to go into certain areas twice. But in the case of Snow Kingdom, there's actually the convenient feature of having the roll cancel clip, and we did not have to go into those tunnel moons. And another reason why saving them for later is better is not only because it skips out on a fight and a bunch of cutscenes, but because each of those tunnel moons, or tunnel rooms rather, have an extra moon added to them after you break open the moon rock. So he'll now go into the 3 tunnels that he didn't access before, and there will be 3 moons in each of them, as opposed to the 2 that were there in the early game.
Yeah, and the reason that we do the Goomba Room in particular is that the added moon in the Goomba Room is actually rather slow. So by doing that room first, we get the fast moons in that room out of the way right away, and we leave it alone the second visit.
Yeah, and it allows us to get the 10 that are required on first visit and leave some of the outside moons, like the fishing moon, for later when they'll be a little faster. So yeah, just a convenience thing there. So yeah, this moon kind of just floating in the air. Would not normally be there on first visit. That's the kind of thing you'll notice. Yeah, like you said, a lot of the Moonrock moons just kind of sit out in the open. They're very quick and easy to collect, which is just the biggest benefit of opening the Moonrocks.
Yeah, if these moons were available in the early game, there would be no doubt in my mind that they would be part of the 80% route for a lot of situations, just because of how out in the open a lot of them tend to be and how easy they are to grab. But you do have to open up the Moonrock in order to access them.
Oh, Neo having some trouble getting through this archway here. Sometimes the camera does weird things as you're trying to enter these tunnels. Causes you to bonk.
Yeah, archway skip, one of the hardest tricks in this game, I would argue. Now, anybody who's familiar with this particular sub-area knows that Rango waits for you at the top. And Ice Rango is actually one of the hardest fights in this game, I would say, as far as the Brutals are concerned. So as Neo approaches this... Oh wait, where is he? He's gone. Rango has been decimated and is now just a mound that floats in the ice, and he's actually left us 2 moons to grab very conveniently.
And he unlocks the true boss of Snow Kingdom, the Lurker under the ice.
The Lurker under the ice. That fitting in with what we were mentioning before, of course. Memes aside, because we already broke the sequence, we've already achieved peace in this kingdom. All we have to do when we get into this room is collect the moon that Rango has left behind. The game doesn't actually make us fight him at all, which is very handy.
And similarly here, you would normally have to collect moon shards in this room, but instead the shards are all gone and the moon that you get from them is already spawned waiting for us at the top. So just gotta climb up there and grab it.
Which is funny, because this game treats sequence breaks differently in certain situations.
Yeah.
Like, when you think of Sand Kingdom, which is another kingdom that we sequence, you still have to collect the moon shards in order for that moon to spawn. But in this room in particular, the moon shards are gone. It's very weird how this game treats sequence breaks.
Now, if the sand moon shards were treated the same way, that would be a moon that we would collect this run.
Most likely, yeah, because it would just be sitting out in the open.
Because we do go to that area of Sand Kingdom. It's just running around the entire way to each corner to collect all 5 of the moon shards is very slow. But if the moon was just sitting there for us, we would almost certainly grab it.
So Neo has made his way through all of the tunnels, grabbed all of the quick moons within there, and he's just going to make one quick pit stop into this Bound Bowl area. Opening the Moonrock actually offers a rematch to the Bound Bowl, but of course Bound Bowl itself being rather slow, so he's actually just going to grab some moons within this area before warping out back to the Odyssey for one more quick moon before leaving.
So yeah, he'll just collect one more moon that's kind of hanging in the middle of the air for no apparent reason, and make his way to the next warp painting in the chain, which will take him to Cascade Kingdom.
And important to note, Snow, Seaside, Wooded, Lake, those kingdoms, you can choose them in a particular order when you arrive to them the first time. So if we were to choose Seaside very first, we would actually be in Seaside right now instead of Snow. It changes the order of the warp paintings as we go along through these kingdoms. The reason that we'd have to choose Wooded first is actually for a reason of hint arts. We have to look at a hint art in the Wooded revisit in order to activate it by the time we get to sand, and that would not be possible if we went to lake first. So as Neo is leaving Snow Kingdom, Luckless is arriving.
Almost synchronized painting transitions there.
Very close, yep.
So yeah, Luckless about a kingdom behind here. You'll see him do all those things that Neo just did. As Neo traverses the way through one of my least favorite revisits of Cascade Kingdom. There's a lot of things that can mess with you here that aren't necessarily your fault.
Yeah, a handful of very treacherous kind of moons that hang over the edge of the kingdom specifically that can be rather frustrating. There's one particular sub-area I know you're a big fan of, Kerbis.
Oh yes. Anywhere in the game dealing with the cloud platforms is not my favorite.
Indeed, and Cascade Kingdom in particular does have
a lot of them, yeah. So Luckless showing off what a clean Notes Moon can look like, as Neo is going to enter that very sub-area. So my approach here, and I think most people's approach, is just to avoid the cloud platforms as much as possible.
Yeah, you can see Neo doing just that. Grabbing this one. Every sub-area in the game typically has 2 power moons that you can collect. The sub-area is kind of defined by a speech bubble, actually. If you are to ever revisit a sub-area, Cappy will give you a dialogue, something along the lines of, oh, I think there might be some more things to collect here. If, for example, you haven't collected all the power moons or the purple coins in the sub-area, and if you have, Cappy will usually say something along the lines of, oh, I think we're all done here. I don't think there's anything that we can do here. And that's kind of what defines what a sub-area is. Usually an entrance to a sub-area is something along the lines of a pipe or a door with a hat on it that you can use Cappy to bust open, or sometimes a scarecrow and entering the sub-area without Cappy. Neo making very quick work of that sub-area, though, doing his best to avoid the cloud platforms. As you said, they can be quite frustrating to deal with.
Yeah, so something we may have overlooked, we used the dino to skip over needing to travel through this 2D section to get to the top of Cascade Kingdom on the first visit, as well as again at the start of this visit. Just another place where it's faster to come in here later because that Notes Moon is not here until at Post Moon Rock. So it's better to not come in here at all and do this little skip with the dino and then come in here and grab both moons at the same time.
Yes, exactly. And you'll see that same example many times throughout the run. I believe there's a couple of 2D areas that kind of facilitate that example. Now you can see here on the right, Luckless is actually grabbing the Shining on High Moon before he enters Shiveria, which to me signals he's going to be going for a particular trick that involves avoiding using the very slow Blowy Joey, as we like to call him, to get up to the painting in the end. We'll see if he's able to pull that trick off.
Yeah, it's a jump that I think saves about a second or two in this category with the way the route works, but can be very frustrating. A lot of people don't like it, so don't bother to go for it. But yeah, it is optimally faster to do so. So it looks like Luckless is going to show off a bit of an optimal route here.
Now Neo traversing through Cascade, almost taking a dive off of the floating platforms there, actually. I'm actually a rather big fan of Cascade on the revisit. I think it's a very fun kingdom to kind of bounce around, with the exception of the frustrating cloud platforms. There are a couple of very quick moons that you can grab here, and it's actually rather fun to use the captures in certain ways. Now, I didn't see if Neo grabbed the first story. Did he?
He did not do FMS in this run. He elected to not do it. I think partially just because he was afraid of losing time to it, as well as being afraid of accidentally grabbing it on the second visit here, because if you do skip the first moon and you grab it later on, it soft locks the game.
Yeah, another example of like sequence breaks being treated strangely. You know, you would expect that kind of the rule for that would be the same way across the board, but not such the case with this moon. It actually does soft lock the game, forcing you to reset. But other sequence breaks do allow us to continue.
So yeah, there's no real risk involved with doing first moon skip in any percent, for example, but you do have to be careful here because you're running past with the dino that section, so you have to drop off into the water earlier. It loses you a bit of time, but yeah, you don't want to be soft locking your game halfway through a 3.5 hour speed run. So I think probably a smart play to just not bother with it, as it again only saves a few seconds at the end of the day.
Yes, indeed. And we see here Neo traversing through the final portions of Cascade. He's just at the bottom of the waterfall. There is a little nook available to him very close that will provide another warp painting. He will be on his way to Bowser's Kingdom.
Yes, as Luckless himself approaches true final boss of Snow Kingdom, rather, not Sand Kingdom.
The hardest boss in the game, in my opinion.
For sure. I mean, what other boss do you have to fight on ice physics? Tell me.
Definitely not Ice Rango.
Who's Ice Rango?
I don't even know who that guy is.
Never seen him before.
You know what's funny is the very first time I ran any percent in this game, I didn't have enough coins for the shot moon and snow. So not really knowing what I was supposed to do, I decided to just continue that sub area after collecting the moon that was behind the mountain.
Oh no.
Not really realizing that Rango was waiting for me at the top, so definitely not my greatest showing in any percent category. But I learned my lesson very quickly.
Ooh, Luckless looks like he was struggling to make that jump, but luckily wall slides down and just grabs the little cliff that you're intended to slide across anyways in order to get to that treasure chest moon.
And now,
Bowser's Kingdom is a very strange one to me because there's a lot of warping involved. It's a very disjointed kingdom. Everything's separated by these long stretches of zip lines.
yeah, so you kind of just like go to a particular part of Bowser's Kingdom, gather the fast moons, warp to a different part, and do the same thing.
Exactly. It's not really... There's really no other kingdom like it in this run.
I would agree, yeah.
And you grab the majority of the checkpoints on your first visit here, and you use almost all of them on the second visit.
That is true, actually.
I think there's only maybe two or three checkpoints that you don't wind up using in this kingdom.
Yeah, and a couple that you don't grab, but that's because towards the end of this kingdom, there are actually a couple of checkpoints really, really closely clustered together, and it makes warping slightly more difficult on the map screen as a result.
Yeah, and you see Luckless going for this jump here, this painting jump. He has to get a vault, as you just saw him get there, a vault off of his cap, which requires pretty precise positioning of his hat. So he gets it pretty quickly there. Probably didn't save time overdoing the way Neo did, but good that he can show that off for us either way.
Still a very neat trick, to be sure.
So you'll see Luckless grab this moon here that he missed out on the first visit. because he elected to get the treasure chest moon instead. So Luckless pulling out all of the little optimal time savers that a lot of people just don't bother to go for.
In darker side, it actually makes a rather significant difference. Getting the treasure chest on the second visit is actually quite a bit slower, whereas actually taking a bonk trying to do the dino skip there, but it is technically more optimal to grab the treasure chest in any category in the first visit to Cascade, but it actually makes a rather significant difference if you have to revisit Cascade.
So another one of my favorite moons in the game, collecting these notes while trying to dodge spinies.
Yeah, spinies are just infamously not fun in this game. There's no real way to defeat them unless you're using something like bombs or some sort of secondary weapon. Cappy can't really do anything except push them out of the way, so they're very frustrating to deal with sometimes.
It's particularly frustrating in that instance because you're trying to use Cappy to collect the notes, but he is constantly running into the spinies and returning to you instead of collecting the notes. So
yeah.
It can be a fun time, to say the least. Some nice Pokio movement on the walls here to get this notes moon.
Very
as
clean.
Luckless is going to enter my favorite sub area. We'll see if he can have as good of a time here as Neo did.
Making his way up the wall just fine. There is a bit of a riskier and more optimal strategy that you can use to get up to that first moon in this area, but it does require hitting one of the cloud platforms kind of on the way up. And I know that those can be the most frustrating part of this sub area, so best to just avoid it in a race setting. Now Neo making his final warp in this Bowser's Kingdom, taking one final quick moon on his way to the warp painting, which is nearby.
She gets from fighting this thing. Whatever this thing is.
Yeah, it's some sort of, I think they call it an invader of Bowser's Kingdom.
I don't know, he looked pretty peaceful until Mario
Until we showed up.
I don't know that he was invading anything.
He was just chilling with some Goombas, and we ruined his day. So
yeah, calling Nintendo's bluff on that one.
And now Neo on his way to Seaside, again bringing up that going into certain kingdoms at certain times does change the order of when we arrive at certain kingdoms. So had we chosen Seaside first, we'd actually be arriving at Snow, but there is no real discernible difference. So we will be going to Seaside now. Seaside, one of the more peaceful revisits, I would say.
Yeah, I consider Seaside one of the easier revisits. One of the easiest to be consistent at, anyway. There's not too much crazy stuff going on here. Largely in part to a lot of underwater movement, which is kind of just hold forward as a fish capture.
Yeah.
So not too much to mess up. I'd say that the one true difficult thing is the 2D section, grabbing the 3 moons in the 2D section, as well as like some tricky camera manip things. But outside of that, everything else is rather easy to be consistent at.
Yeah, relatively straightforward.
It's kind of like a nice little break halfway through the run.
Yeah, I don't find that there is very many things that can go wrong here.
Especially with the beginning of Wooded Kingdom also kind of serving as a bit of a break, because you have the cutscene from doing the final boss fight there. So just this whole little stretch is kind of a more relaxed part of the middle of the run, but then things start to pick up again after you defeat Torque Drift and Wooded.
Yes, that's right.
And gets into actually what I would consider probably the most difficult stretch of the run with Wooded Kingdom, Sand Kingdom, and Metro Kingdom.
But arguably the most fun as well. There's a lot going on.
For sure.
They're some of the biggest kingdoms in the game, so there's a lot of opportunity for some very quick moons. And they just have the most moons in general, so lots happening there. Very fun kingdoms to run around in, especially with how vertical they are. Sand Kingdom being the opposite, actually very kind of spread out and diverse kingdom, but still lots of things to do.
So Luckless going to go on his last dino adventure here. Wrap up that portion of Cascade Kingdom. Work his way back up to the area.
Yep, Neo beginning a little adventure of his own with Cheap Cheap, gathering some quick moons along the underwater highway portion of the run. Some of these moons very reminiscent to the any percent route. We kind of just do them in reverse order as we go through here.
So Seaside I kind of think of as the first visit as the above ground visit and the second visit as the underwater visit. Because since you're only required to collect 10 story moons at Seaside on the first visit, or 10 moons total, and 7 of them are story moons. You don't need too many extras, you can collect them all above water. And then Seaside 2, you just come in and do a lap around the kingdom and collect all of these moons that are just waiting underwater for you.
Yeah, and they are rather quick, especially when you combine them with some moons that are available in the post game. Some are just, again, sitting out in the open in the underwater highway. So very quick to grab all of the pre-existing moons on the second visit. Now Neo approaching the best capture in the game as he brings him over to this, I don't even know what they're called, Bublane resident, I suppose you'd say, who's very in Glidon, as you know you should be.
Yeah, just one of the more wholesome things about this game. You get moons for just being friends with people sometimes.
Yeah. Now this is that 2D area we were talking about before. On the whole, it looks like it might be rather slow, but because we do need that 2D moon sub-area, or sorry, Toadette achievement, it can be very quick to just grab all 3 of the moons that do exist in here.
Yes, it requires exiting and entering the area from multiple different angles here.
This Notes moon in particular is actually one that only exists in the post-game as well.
Neo in treacherous waters here as he sits on 1 health and he has some Koopas to get past. He does collect all the notes. We'll see if he can make it back to the moon before he gets bopped.
Yeah, very scary indeed. Making it look a little bit more treacherous than it needs to be, but he's got the moon and he's refilled his health.
Yeah, played it very safe there, working his way back over towards the moon. A good call because he would lose quite a bit of time if he happened to die there. So now she's going to capture Cheap Cheap and head on to collect some more underwater moons.
Yep, making it basically the continuation of the lap around the kingdom that we missed out on after warping. This one reminiscent of any percent as well, this underwater shortcut. And then we're going to continue finishing the lap around the kingdom. Getting some moons that are just in plain sight. And we'll see if Neo goes for some camera manipulation strategies here. Basically there's an eel kind of living in this tunnel, and by pointing the camera directly down, he was able to manipulate when the eel popped out of the hole and avoiding damage entirely.
Yeah, he's able to slip in and out before the eel ever pokes his head. So, something I don't think we've mentioned at all, but when you take damage in this game and then collect the moon when you're not full health, you lose about 2.5 seconds to the animation of your health refilling collecting the moon. So anytime you can avoid taking damage, it's gonna wind up being faster.
Neo capturing that bunny, making it look rather quick. Now he's just got to make his way over to this fountain. And inside this goblet in the center of the Bublane is another warp painting, and he will be on his way to, I believe it's the Wooded Kingdom next?
Yes, it is. So yeah, we're going to talk to Peach in a lot of these kingdoms as well. We did in every kingdom so far in the post-game. Unlike the tourist, she's just sitting in every kingdom waiting to be talked to in no particular order. She's just there, no matter what. So thankfully don't have to miss out on Peach moons because of kingdom orders or any.
Yeah. I believe that there is one exception to that rule, that being Peach. You have to actually have talked to her in all of the other kingdoms prior to speaking to her in Moon, but she is kind of out of the way in the Moon Kingdom, so we don't even bother with that particular Peach visit.
I think the one on the moon is actually available the same as the other ones, but then you can talk to her in Mushroom Kingdom after talking to her in every kingdom for one final moon.
Right, the Mushroom one is definitely the last one that you can get.
Yeah, the Moon Kingdom, we do have a revisit to there, but it's a very quick one. We don't even open the moon rock. We just collect some moons around where the Odyssey spawns and dip out of there quickly.
And now we're in Wooded. Wooded being the only kingdom that we didn't in Neo boss. The moon rock is only available to bust open after we have achieved peace in the kingdom it's available in. So we do have to beat this boss in order to open up the moon rock and gain access to some very quick moons in this kingdom.
Yeah, so you now kind of see what I mentioned earlier with the warp painting spawning you pretty much directly next to the entrance to this fight. So that's pretty much the only reason we do it now as opposed to first visit.
Yep, saves us a little bit of time setting up for the post game. Also, another benefit is that once you've beat this boss, it actually spits us out at the Odyssey, and the moon rock is basically right around the corner. And now this boss fight, probably the easiest of the main bosses in the game, in my opinion. There is a strategy that you can employ to kind of make this fight go a little bit faster, but not much. One that we've very humbly named Speedy Nut Boy, using the spawn platform to kind of break how this uproot travels. Usually when he lands, he kind of has a buffer animation stopping him in place before he continues running along. But if you land him on a particular part of that spawn platform, it kind of breaks him a little bit, and he's able to continue running after landing. So Neo, you can see, taking advantage of that. The Speedy Nut Boy does live on in this run. Making quick work of that boss. We see Luckless buying the moon in Bowser's Kingdom, making one last warp before he makes his way to Seaside.
So with the collection of this multi-moon, Neo has achieved world peace for every kingdom in the game, which is actually an achievement as well. So it gives the benefit of opening up all the moon rocks as well as giving you an extra moon at the end.
Indeed. Another one of those overlooked things. By collecting that last multi-moon, he actually gains an extra moon on top of that with Toadette in the end.
So something I always found incredibly awkward is doing these moons on second visit 2 hours into a speed run because I at least was so used to doing them at the very start of Wooded Kingdom for 90%, and for World Peace for that matter. Doing them so late into the run feels a little trippy.
Yeah, with the sequence of this game and how it changes the atmosphere as you kind of progress through the kingdom. The Wooded Kingdom actually turns into this bright daytime level.
Oh, and I didn't even notice that Luckless unfortunately planted his seed in the wrong pot. So he had to
That's a
go
rough
get
one.
a gush in there to water the plant. Thankfully, you can water the plants in this kingdom. But that is the only pot in the game where the seed will take longer to grow than the other ones. Normally it takes about 21 minutes, which is plenty of time in between first and second Seaside visits, but that one, I don't remember how long exactly it takes, but I want to say it's close to an hour. So it's generally not quite fully grown by the time you get back to Seaside. But yeah, just a bit of a time loss to go grab a gush in and water the plant to finish the growing process.
Yeah, not a significant time loss, mind you, but one that is incredibly frustrating, especially considering if you do happen to plant the seed and forget about it, plant the seed in the wrong pot and then forget about it until you return to Seaside, you're kind of in for a nasty surprise because it is kind of just a time loss that you could have avoided but have to suffer the consequences for like about an hour later.
Yeah, it's kind of just the price we pay by trying to throw the seed at the correct pot from far away in order to save time. Just wind up costing you way more time for missing, having bad aim.
Now, Neo, we kind of just missed an opportunity there, but Neo making a very treacherous jump across a giant death zone there, using a rocket flower and a vector in order to reach that platform all the way out in the middle of nowhere where Captain Toad is just kind of hanging out. The original intended way to get up to that observation deck that Neo just jumped from is to do a little bit of like a timer challenge in order to get up to the top. Obviously, that way is incredibly slow, so we do some speedrun tactics to get up there. Grabbing the checkpoint, that is probably the best vantage point in this entire kingdom, is that observation deck, and we will be using that checkpoint many times in order to access a lot of the kingdom very fast.
Yeah, so when you're falling from a really high place in this game, you can just angle the way Mario falls, and it allows you to get either extra speed or extra distance, just depending on your intention, in order to reach places easier than, or sometimes places that would be impossible to reach otherwise. And that getting to Captain Toad there is a good example of it. Just angling Mario the correct way after jumping off the platform with the fire flower will allow you to cover much more of that gap in an easier way. So it makes that jump not very tight if you get a good vector, where it otherwise would be very close and borderline impossible.
Yeah, Neo getting in on the first try, though, making it look rather easy.
So something that will come into play relatively soon here is there's some bird cycles we have to deal with in the post-game here. So there are birds traveling around most kingdoms, and each time you warp or exit a sub-area or do anything similar, they will start at a very specific point, and we've set up the route in such a way that the bird will cross our paths at the perfect moment for us to grab it. But it means that you can't waste any time being slow, or you'll miss the cycle, essentially. So Neo's gonna complete this sub-area, and then he's going to warp to that observation deck checkpoint, and from there, a bird cycle will start. So everything you see him do from now until he collects that bird moon is going to be even more time important, time sensitive than anything else he does. Right.
Yeah, just because there is only one real access point for this bird. If you mess up the timing on any of these upcoming moons that Neo is about to grab, then it will result in potentially missing this bird. So he has to be sure to do it all relatively quickly.
And it's to the point, especially with this wooded bird, but pretty much in most cases, if you miss the cycle, you pretty much just have to warp and try again, because waiting for it to loop all the way back around is going to be way slower.
Yeah. That being said, in a speed run like this, especially in a race setting, it's probably best to skip getting the bird entirely if you've missed it and replacing it with something else.
Yeah, and collecting moons from birds is actually an achievement we get in this run, but with a lot of the bird moons being so fast because of the way they're routed in to just line up with other things perfectly, we actually get way more than we need for the achievement. So if you do miss them, it is feasible to just skip. Oh, and Luckless is going to take a death in the 2D section.
Oh
Turning a
no!
little too fast, collecting the last notes there. Probably feeling a little rushed because he is on a timer to collect those notes. So he's going to have to travel all the way back down and start that section over again.
Which is really unfortunate. It actually means that you have to, if I'm not mistaken, you have to hit those bricks again in order to make them appear. Yep. So having to go through this entire section again, that's going to be a huge time loss.
Now, thankfully, he had the awareness to know that he had to go back here and break these invisible blocks again. Otherwise, he would have lost even more time. So yeah, I would say that's one of the more punishing places to die in this game, in this route.
Yeah, a recently added part of the darker side route, in fact. So perhaps just unfamiliarity in this particular section.
It's a very easy place to take damage, so it's understandable to die here.
Certainly.
Honestly. Just that initial Koopa that you jump up to hit down and collect some of the notes. It's hard to bounce on him without taking damage or slowing down, so a lot of people elect to just eat the damage and get up there faster. But it does put you at risk, closer to dying.
Now Neo is going for one of my favorite sub-areas in the Bullet Bill Breakthrough sub-area. There is a kind of a remix version of this sub-area in the Seaside Kingdom, which we will not be seeing in this run at all. But the dark side actually has some very infamous sub-areas which kind of play on some of these moon rock sub-areas that appear throughout the game. The remix version actually does not allow you to use Cappy, which is a very interesting challenge. Very frustrating for some people who maybe are not familiar with speedrun strategies, but as a speedrunner, it's probably one of my favorites.
Luckless going for this camera manip as well. Looks like he turned his camera up just a bit too soon, so the eel's going to come out. He's probably better off just waiting for him to go back into his hole. He will. Just a little slower there, having to wait, but it's better than taking damage, because that would lose him a full, like, 2.5 seconds. So definitely a smart play to wait a second or so for the eel to slip back in his nest. So Neo on his way to Sand Kingdom now. Another one of the really tricky kingdoms in this route. There's a lot of not only bird cycles, but just a lot going on here to keep track of. Something coming up, for instance, after he collects this ground pound moon and opens the moon rock, there will be one of the dog moons that we mentioned earlier, where you have to kind of lead the dog to a spot and then he'll dig up a moon after a given amount of time.
Yes, and the dog moons by themselves are actually rather slow, but by manipulating the dog to begin moving as soon as we arrive kind of where he is and doing some things in the interim, we are able to make the dog moon rather fast just by kind of initiating him, allowing him to go to the spot he needs to, and then once we've accomplished some other tasks in between, he's already found the star that, or sorry, the moon that we're looking for, and we can just ground pound to get it.
Yeah, so we're gonna activate the dog here. Just keep the camera turned towards him so that he stays moving, essentially.
believe what this achievement here that Neo is grabbing right now, this music toad, I believe that is also at the end.
I believe so. I'm not sure, actually.
So that one being the first one in the route, basically letting this music toad listen to a particular track that he likes gives us a moon. We'll be talking to 2 other music toads along the way, and while these music toads may or may not be that fast by themselves, if it does trigger a Toadette moon, it kind of is like a 3-for-1 deal, which makes them quite a bit faster in the end. And the same thing goes for the slots moons too, actually, now that I think about it.
Slots moons are all too slow on their own, but paired with the achievement, they come just barely fast enough. So we're going to see Neo's actually starting right now on another bird cycle as he leaves that room. He'll get to the Jaxi ruins, and there will be a bird circling around it as he gets there. And it'll be on the right side for him if his movement is good enough.
Another thing you'll notice here is that Neo very purposefully turning his camera one direction while he approaches this Goomba, and that's because, like a lot of things in this game, this platform that he's riding currently is on a cycle completely based on it being on camera. Lots of things in this game do not start activating or spawning or moving or anything until they're on camera, so making an effort to turn the camera one direction in order to make that platform appear at the right time.
Yeah, so dealing with a platform cycle in the midst of dealing with a bird cycle in this particular section of Sand Kingdom.
Now, another baby cycle involved here, making sure that he gets this Bullet Bill's attention just so it doesn't crash into anything as he makes his way over to this platform. This next moon that he's about to grab actually just was fast enough for the route. Using a mechanic with the Bullet Bills that we discovered more recently, if after you get the first boost with the Bullet Bill, if you let go of the boost button and just continue to shake the controller, it actually goes quite a bit faster. And now that bird cycle is finally complete. A little bit of a longer one, but now that moon is just kind of sitting out in the open because we were able to get that bird optimally. So we're going to see Neo run directly by it as he initiates this timer challenge.
So this is our first real chance of utilizing Jaxi that we paid for way back in Sand at the beginning of the run. We'll use him for another long stretch in this kingdom here, making the time we took to pay for his services very much worth it.
Yeah, the Sand Kingdom being a very horizontal kingdom, lots of open space with not a lot going on in between things, so having Jaxi available to us to kind of run around the kingdom is going to make things quite a bit faster to get around.
Yeah, more or less the fastest way to cover travel on straight ground.
And now we're going to pop into the Oasis. A handy little feature of world peace in the Sand Kingdom is that a lot of this stuff was originally frozen over, but is now nice and open and available, including this fishing moon and a couple of other things. So visiting the Oasis in the second visit is definitely a must versus the first visit. A lot more available to us here.
So Neo having some unfortunate luck with the fish there. It is luck-based on which bite you're able to pull up the line and successfully get the moon. It's based on vibrations in your controller. So there's the fish will bite at the line every so many seconds, And if it's a soft rumble on your controller, you won't be able to pull him out of the water. But if it's a strong rumble, you can pull him out and collect the moon. But it is entirely luck based, whether it's a soft or strong rumble. So you just got to wait it out. I hope you don't get too unlucky. One of the few instances of luck in this run and in this game in general.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's largely a execution skill based kind of game.
Yeah, but some people do prefer those kind of luck-based games. It kind of adds to the excitement factor. Like, for example, Pokemon games, I think, is one that comes to mind immediately for me, where you can have excellent execution most of the time, and then those moments that really make the run make or break are more or less down to RNG working in your favor. I think that kind of plays up to the hype, but on the opposite end, I think that a game fully based on execution is very fascinating to watch, because you know how much skill has to go into pulling off certain tricks and things.
Yeah, it's in general, I would generalize it as, RPGs are going to be more luck based a lot of times, just because you can't control what your opponents are going to do.
Indeed.
And then platformers are in general going to lean on the execution side.
Neo making very quick work throughout the Sand Kingdom here. He's actually just about to approach another portion where Jaxie is going to be helping us out. We're going to be making a quick dash across the Sand Kingdom to an area we have not yet been.
I'll say Peach is rather brave for being precariously perched on the edge of the pyramid here.
Yeah, overlooking the entire desert. She does not have a cat bounce available to her, so hopefully she doesn't. That would be really treacherous.
Well, hey, you don't know that. Maybe Tiara is a better partner than you're giving her credit for.
Yeah, you know what? I actually do not know. And to be fair as well, Peach does have some floaty abilities, as has been shown in previous games, so I'm sure she's just fine.
That's true as well. Makes you wonder, when is the mod of playing as Peach and Tiara instead of Mario and Cappy?
Stay tuned, fellows.
Maybe in Super Mario Odyssey 2.
Yeah. They'll make it like Super Mario Bros. 2, where you can choose between 4 characters.
As long as we get Yoshi as playable instead of Toad.
What, you don't want to be Toad? Or bouncing around the kingdoms?
No, not really.
Hey, fair enough, fair enough. That being said, Yoshi actually is a capture in this game.
That's true. I try to forget sometimes because he's such a boring capture.
I know, and arguably one of the worst designed as well. I feel like the controls for Yoshi just make me very frustrated to use him.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of the captures I feel are like really creative and well done. But yeah, Yoshi, I do not have a fun time with.
Yeah. Luckily, we don't really have to use him in this run. In fact, I don't think we do have to use him at all.
Only at the very end.
Yes. And that's only for a very short portion as well, just to get up a climbing section. So you don't even get to see the wrath of Yoshi, as he can be very frustrating. Now Neo grabbing one more quick moon along a little electric wire portion, making his way into a sub area, and then we're more or less wrapping up this Sand Kingdom. There are just a couple of extra moons that we need to grab.
the one unfortunate thing about this run, about this category, is that we skip out on a lot of the sub areas just because there are load times entering and exiting the sub areas, and oftentimes that makes these rooms just barely too slow to make it into the route.
Yeah, the Sand Kingdom actually does have quite a few very quick sub areas where the moons are kind of available, floating in the air, or mines. You'll notice that he was just in the Bullet Bill sub area directly before that. There is a way to kind of jump on top of the walls and just roll across the entire sub area and kind of skip out on the whole puzzle portion of it, which makes that a very fast sub area to be in. But the same cannot be said for a lot of the other sub areas. One being the Jaxi driver sub area, which does require you to use Jaxi to collect some notes as well as run all the way through quite a bit slower. It does not make its cut in this route in particular. However, if you are interested in seeing what this game does have to offer, the All Unique Moons category is something you might be interested in. It does encompass all of the unique moons in the game, requiring you to do essentially all of the missions this game has to offer, even the slowest ones. So, that being said, Darker Side is actually a speedrun that is 3.5 hours on average. But we collect 503 of the moons in the game, which is the majority of them. All Unique Moons is actually about 8 hours long, which, doesn't seem proportionally correct. How could the remaining 300 moons be the remaining 5 hours of the game when, that just kind of goes to show that objectively Darker Side is the kind of the Super Mario Odyssey category to run, because you do get to see all of the game, you get to revisit all of them, but you're also still collecting all of the fastest moons, and it is just a very fun and exciting category to run in general.
So if you pay attention to Luckless's screen right now, he tried to jump down and get the nut under the observation deck, but he bonked and missed it. And he elected to kind of skip out on it and continue on his way. I assume in order to just try to make this bird cycle and back up that moon with something else later on. Or he might go back and try to get that moon on its own later as well. Probably better at that point to just get it back up though. But we'll see if he makes the bird cycle here. Looks like you should.
I'm not seeing the bird anywhere. Hopefully, oh yeah, there he is. So opting to grab it
timer challenge.
Before the timer challenge, and in fact, that is probably the safest option, especially if you're brand new to the category, to just grab the bird immediately before the timer challenge. Slightly less optimal, but also much safer, and usually much more lenient. And now Neo is done with Sand Kingdom, and he's approaching Metro Kingdom, which in itself is a very, very fun kingdom to kind of jaunt through as well. Going to be showing off some timer challenges here, some very quick moons available in the post-game of Metro Kingdom. One of my favorite kingdoms in the run, to be fair. Lots of fun stuff to do here. Also, Luckless, it did look like he was just performing the bird timer just to be safe with it. He did go back up the observation deck to grab that moon and is now back down on his way. He did jump into the Bullet Bill breakthrough from above, so it does look like he actually did try to grab that. Neo attempting this timer challenge and actually missing the dive on that. Do it over again.
And he gets it nicely the second time. There is actually a strat to use the fire escape to collect that timer challenge moon a bit faster, but it's a lot riskier as well. It's easy to bonk on the railing of the fire escape, and it's kind of easy to dive over or under the moon as well, so going around the intended way is probably a bit safer.
Yeah, just a touch safer. Albeit a little bit slower, but, especially in a race setting, it can be valuable to opt for some of the safer methods in order to continue on with the run rather than getting stuck in a particular place. Consistency is the name of the game here.
So gonna see Neo collecting one of these seeds that he planted first visit, kind of just directly in his path as he goes towards this trash pile moon. So starting to see some of those things that we set up early on in the run start to pay off.
That's right. That being a very quick moon, of course, just by itself, hanging out in the open, like we said, a lot of post-game moons tend to have that to their benefit, where they're just kind of sitting out in the open in our way. And by setting up that seed, which may have looked slow in the beginning, it is now an incredibly quick moon to grab as we kind of traverse through this kingdom.
So coming into, in my opinion, the tough stretch of Metro Kingdom after Neo collects this moon, he'll have to do this sub-area that you may be familiar with from shorter categories, but there's an extra moon that he's to collect along the way. He's going to talk to Pat on one of these civilians' heads, and then he's going to warp over to the park and start kind of a rough stretch where it's just easy to make mistakes on a lot of stuff for the rest of this kingdom.
Yeah, we're actually approaching the part of Metro Kingdom Park, which is where the basis likes to hang out in the early part of the run, which again is kind of that section where the setup for missing the scrap moon comes into play here, because there is a dog that kind of hangs out in the commemorative park here, and if this dog were the only thing that we had to do here, he would be very slow. But instead we're going to kind of compound this dog with a couple of other things to make him a little bit more viable. So grabbing that trash moon, the dog is kind of sniffing around the park. He's going to be digging up some coins here. And after those coins, we're going to lead him over to where there is a secret power moon hiding. And while he's digging up that one, we're actually going to knock a bird out of the air. And then go back to Mr. Doggo, who will hopefully very conveniently be finding something right as we approach him.
Yeah, so with the exception of the dog in sand, each dog that you encounter generally has to dig up one other spot before it gets to the actual spot with the moon. So it's kind of scripted, you know where those spots are going to be. It's a matter of leading him there and letting the dog do the rest. Sometimes a bit slower than you would like him to, but that's okay.
Now Neo doing this, I can't remember the name of it here. It's like a pitch black mountain or something along the lines of that. After he does this, he's going to be warping out and grabbing a couple of fast moons available kind of around the city hall area.
So you can see Luckless turned his camera a little bit too early or too late and wound up having a bad platform cycle there, which might also cost him on the bird cycle when he gets over to Jaxi Ruins.
Yeah, it is quite interesting to note just how like time demanding this particular darker side kingdom like routing is. You don't really see a whole lot of that in other categories such as world peace and like any percent, for example, but it does really play into darker side quite a bit.
So the good thing about this bird cycle that Luckless is dealing with is it's a shorter one. The bird only travels around the perimeter of the Jaxi Ruins, like little swamp poison area. So if he does miss it, it's not as big of a time loss as some of the other bird cycles would be. He just has to either chase it around to the other corner or wait for it to loop back around. So one of the probably the least punishing bird cycle in this route, along with the Lake Kingdom one, which we've yet to get to.
Yeah, the Lake Kingdom one probably being the least of your worries. As long as you jump at a particular angle, you kind of catch him before he even starts flying around, which is kind of handy.
Yeah, and even if you miss him, there's a pretty good place to get him as he loops around that doesn't lose you very much time at all.
Speaking of birds, Neo actually setting up kind of a bird cycle for himself, making sure that before he dives off of City Hall, he's turning his camera in a specific way, actually taking a bonk on the post there. So he's actually going to set up a different way of capturing this bird.
Yeah,
which involves
like I said earlier, when
here.
you exit sub areas or warp or do anything like that where you're reloading the main area, you're going to reset bird cycles. So entering that room, which we wouldn't normally go into, that reset the bird cycle for him and allowed him to catch that bird right as he exits. It's a nice little backup. Oh, and Luckless striking that bird as he runs into the timer challenge moon. So he was late on the cycle, but it actually wound up coming back around at a good spot for him.
Yeah, very lucky setup. Usually it kind of involves having to chase the bird around a little bit in order to make that happen. Looks like Neo actually took a bit of a death here in the bullet bill breakthrough area. Very notorious area for speedrunners. These pulls are particularly unforgiving in their, like, for some reason it just doesn't seem like you're able to grab them very nicely. And kind of showing why this sub-area is so notoriously difficult.
Yeah, these poles, they interact in very awkward ways when you're trying to climb on them, and like some poles you can jump away and throw your hat back towards them and dive onto them to climb them quicker, but the ones in that room don't really work that way. So you kind of have to awkwardly shimmy up them instead.
Yeah.
And it's like any time you're trying to grab them, it's just like a crapshoot. If it'll actually work, it feels like.
Yeah, and with that sub-area finished, Neo is also finished with the Metro Kingdom, and he's going to be on his way to Lake Kingdom now. And we've kind of exited the most treacherous part of the post-game, with the exception of Luncheon Kingdom still coming up. A lot of the big kingdoms are out of the way now. Lake Kingdom is a very compact area, not a whole lot really going on. Neo getting some very good fish luck here. I find that this particular fish tends to like to nuzzle up against the top wall and face in the opposite direction, which can be very frustrating, but Neo actually getting some good RNG here.
Yeah, normally your only concern with the fishing moons is what tri bite it will be, but with the lake one, as you said, he's very often running straight into the wall and you have to kind of lure him away before you even start to worry about which bite it will be.
Yeah, and not only a good position, but also a first bite, so Neo's got to be very happy with that particular fishing incident there. And now he's just grabbing one quick moon along the way to this rock, and now Lake being as compact of a kingdom as it is, there are a lot of very quick moons available in this kingdom. So we're going to be doing a very quick lap around here.
And yeah, Lake being a relatively shorter kingdom as far as the revisits go. And once we get to Luncheon, it's also a pretty quick second visit to Luncheon, and that will more or less be the end of our painting chain. And from there, as Neo misses out on the Goombas stack, he's going to try to back up the bird, probably go back and recapture some Goombas. But yeah, that's going to mark the end of the painting chain. Then from there, we'll have to go back and revisit all of the kingdoms that don't have paintings.
Yeah, there are a lot of very quick moons associated with even the ones that aren't in the painting chain. A lot of the moons that aren't, a lot of the kingdoms that aren't in the painting chain are very small as well, so a lot of compact movement associated with them. So very easy to just kind of make a quick visit to them and gather all of the moons available.
Yeah, I think of the post-painting chain stuff as sort of the home stretch of this run.
Definitely.
By the time Neo gets there, he'll probably have about a half hour or so left out of the 3.5 or less total.
Neo setting up the quick cycle in this poison room. Very treacherous, but looks like he's got it just fine. Has to be very careful on his way back to not get hit by anything. Of course, the poison in this game is a one-hit kill. If you touch it, you do not have any opportunity to save yourself from it. So a very treacherous room indeed, but making it look rather easy.
So if you know about the lake painting jump, we unfortunately don't get to see that in this category because we come in through the painting, so we can just grab the moon then.
Yeah, a lot of those kind of trick jumps do not really have their place in Darker Side just because we are doing painting chain. Another very infamous one, of course, being what we call snow dram or the snow painting jump. Does not really have its place in Darker Side just because we come in through the painting anyway.
Luckless knocking that cactus on a really good angle so he can run directly towards the sub area as he collects that moon. Very nice play from him. I've seen, personally myself, I've done this and I've seen other people do this where they accidentally knock that cactus off into the void. And that can be rather frustrating because I believe you have to warp or like enter a sub area to get that to respawn.
Neo with a very nice capture warp strategy there, grabbing a Cheep, leaving him in this little pool inside the plaza, going around the bend into the secret room, and then capture warping with Cappy to get the Cheep back. Very, very swaggy looking strategy from Neo there.
Yeah, that's a very tight strat as well. You don't have very much time to make that work. You kind of have to talk to the little fish in the secret room as optimally as possible to still have time to home in your cap after that conversation.
Yeah, and the approach for that doesn't actually make it all that much more optimal. You might be saving about a second. The alternative there, of course, going directly into the secret room, capturing one of these Cheeps that Neo just grabbed, and then bringing him back into the plaza. But very, very swaggy. Definitely receives some swag points for that. Now you'll see
right past that pipe. That is, entering that pipe would take you to another one of the 2D moons that recently got cut out in favor of the ones in Seaside.
That's right, and by itself it is relatively fast, but just gets edged out by the Seaside maze in particular, so not going to be going in there. If Neo knew, for example, that he was behind on moons, then maybe that could be an alternative, but we won't really know until he dumps his moons into the Odyssey just how far ahead or behind he's going to be.
Another thing you may have noticed watching this run is that Darker Side doesn't utilize any regional points. The only benefit that it could potentially have for this kind of category is moons that come from wearing certain outfits, but the way it works out is collecting coins on top of visiting shops to buy the outfit and the little cutscene that plays from switching outfits all kind of makes that stuff just barely too slow for this category. So this is actually, there aren't any purple coins that are required on this route.
There was at one point some talks of having the boxer shorts be available in the route, as well as the pirate outfit, I believe, made its place in the route at some point. Those are actually both costumes that are not purchased with purple coins at all, but with regular coins, which of course eliminates the time required to collect purple coins in the first place. But again, still having to change into an outfit, still having to talk to an NPC to initiate a dialogue box to spawn the moon in the first place, make them both just a tiny bit too slow.
Well, with the gold coin outfits, since we do already visit shops in order to purchase moons, they are much more likely to make it in, but they're still too slow, which kind of tells you how bad purple coin outfits are.
Yeah, because it is an entirely different shop.
So yeah, Neo, you may have noticed that on the left side of his screen, the moon count started piling up, and then once it got to a certain point, it just kind of stayed the way it is. Well, it has been counting in the background, and Neo's going to collect, a handful of moons in Luncheon Kingdom here. Then he's going to warp to the Odyssey, and he's going to deposit all of those moons that he's been saving up all the way back since Snow Kingdom. So you're going to see a nice little cutscene of depositing all of those moons one by one. And it's very satisfying.
Yep, something we've affectionately referred to as the moon dump. It used to be quite a bit larger. We have actually routed Luncheon Kingdom in a way where we deposit the moons early and revisit Luncheon a little bit later in the route. Kind of just plays into manipulating the way that the game kind of deals with cutscenes, and every time that you deposit moons into the Odyssey, the game will check to see if some outfits are available in the shop. After every 20 moon interval, there are some new outfits to be purchased from the store, and the game tells you that through a little dialogue box. So by depositing our moons early in Luncheon Kingdom, we actually get to avoid one of those particular instances, so it is saving about 3 seconds worth of time.
Yeah, because each kingdom we do after this point essentially gets all of its moons deposited kingdom by kingdom, because we're no longer in a warp payment chain, so we do have to traverse with the Odyssey through between each kingdom. So just manipulating it in such a way that those new outfits being unlocked overlap as much as possible.
Now, upcoming here for Neo is one of the trickier elements. After he's grabbed this moon from the timer challenge, he's actually going to form associated with this timer challenge to do a little bit of a tricky jump in order to reach our friend Captain Toad on that platform all the way over there. We don't actually have a boo available to us, so instead we're going to have to time the jump just so that we get Cappy back in time to grab Captain Toad. Flawless execution by Neo there.
So now is the word back to the Odyssey, and enjoy the moon dump with the best colored moons. That is the other benefit of doing an Luncheon.
Absolutely. These nice light blue colored moons. Something to be said is that in the early game, moons only get put into the Odyssey if they are from the kingdom that you are leaving from. So you can do things like warp paintings and stuff like that, and the moons don't actually get associated with this dump. But once you've reached the post game, all of the moons count, and that's why they are able to compound like this.
And a nice big balloon blow up there.
And with that, Neo has completed his painting chain. There is only one stop, but we will be returning to lunch a bit later.
So you see he had 397 moons, so about 4/5 of the way through as far as moon count goes. But the late game moons tend to be much quicker. As you get further in, the moons become a lot faster opposed to the early games, so much more than 4/5 of the way through the run time-wise.
Yeah, these remaining kingdoms all very, very small, very compact, so a lot of the moons that are available are very quick to grab in these remaining kingdoms.
And Neo going for a jump to the moon cube here. He's going to land on that signpost, but he bonks. Just falls a little too short there. I assume he's going to go ahead and try that again. There's no real risk in keeping up the effort here.
Yeah, going to be going for a second attempt. Ooh, and actually just rolling off the railing, unfortunately.
So what happens there is he tried to do a second long jump, but he probably just held his roll button, because you need to press ZL or ZR in order to long jump. It looks like he's going to go for the Paragoomba and take this the safe way after dying twice. This is the intended way to get over there, flying between the hats in the fog with the Paragoomba. Yeah, if you just hold the roll button for too long, instead of that second long jump coming out, he'll just roll straight off the edge there.
Yep,
there's also a way to do that jump using a triple jump, which can avoid that mistake, but it's a preference thing. Some people prefer the triple jump, some people find long jumps easier.
Yeah, well, I think the long jump gives you a little bit more leniency as to landing on the rail, whereas the triple jump, you really do have to time it just so that you land on it, which can be a little bit tricky. The same kind of rolling off problem can actually happen with that sign as well. If you do manage to land your cap jump on the sign, you can still potentially roll off if you are not fast enough with your long jump. But Neo opting for the backup strategy to break open the moon rock, getting the Goomba, and flying across. Maybe losing a little bit of time, unfortunately, but, you know, this is a race. We do have to kind of move forward with it. Neo not opting for any real dangerous strategies with this timer challenge. There is a method to kind of do what we call a dive back strategy, jumping across, throwing Cappy back towards the Scarecrow, and then diving to the moon, or sorry, the platform with the key on it. Very risky if you are not very well practiced in it, however. Luckless looks like he's trying to join the crowd. Was the idea there. I think maybe he might be a little bit lost.
Can sometimes be really frustrating because sometimes you get caught on just like a grouping of 2 or 3 of the people and you can't get in between them. And you have to kind of jump your way around them, but then when you try to jump over them, you just bounce on their head and don't really move forward. So it can be a very frustrating room if you're not positioned correctly. So Luckless looks like gonna track down this bird before he takes the dog over to the second spot just to be safe. But okay, he did get the bird. He almost missed it. So he's gonna lose a little bit of time there from getting the bird early. But sometimes you just have to do it based on how long the dog takes to dig up the first spot.
Just for not setting up a strategy there, but
so it's a little out of your control.
Now Neo making a little bit of a jump of faith, looking to grab this moon that's out in the fog. Originally the game would like you to capture a Paragoon, fly out there, but with a vector jump we're able to make it out as long as we are okay with the death warp. Now, as of this moment, we're actually, as we're talking about bird cycles, we are initiating another one here. So he has to be very time effective throughout the rest of this Cap Kingdom in order to make sure that the bird lines up with where we want him to be.
And this one can be a very annoying one to track down because you are flying as a Paragoomba, and to fly the fastest possible way in order to actually be able to catch up to the bird, you have to use motion controls. And for some reason, flying as a Paragoomba is one of the least sensitive motion actions in this game. I feel like I have to shake my controller so much harder to get the input to register.
Yep, I would agree with that. I don't know why it is like that, but that just happens to be the case.
So yeah, it's easy to drop motion inputs, which will just slow you down and make it harder to catch up to that bird. So it's best to just make the cycle and not have to worry about it.
You know, that being said, after that ground pound moon is a little bit of a jump to get up the platform, making his way up to this sign moon. Going to be finding a hint art that we originally gathered in the Mushroom Kingdom probably like an hour and a half ago. Then this moon just kind of sitting out in the open on top of the hat. He's going to be capturing this Paragoomba here. Sometimes you can get the quick capture on that one. I find that the Goombas are particularly picky when it comes to those, though. And then just in time, the bird is flying directly past, so he's going to be able to grab that moon right away.
Yeah, really a perfect cycle there.
Yeah, you couldn't really ask for any better because now he's going to be moving on to this Notes moon. If you're any slower than Neo, he'll be kind of on his way past, and you'll kind of have to do a little bit of backtracking. So definitely good execution there.
So yeah, Neo approaching the end of Cap Kingdom here. Just going to clean up a couple more moons. And then he's going to move on to probably the most difficult kingdom in this run.
Yeah, we saved the best for last, to be sure. Lost Kingdom, of course, being an infamously difficult kingdom because it is surrounded by instant kill poison everywhere you look. But this particular visit of Lost Kingdom has us jumping very precariously over a lot of that poison, making it incredibly difficult. And we'll see how Neo is able to do here.
Now, I'm not exaggerating here. I've seen people die upwards of 7 or 8 times in Lost 2 in actual speedruns.
Yep.
So it's scary.
The tilt can be real, especially once you've already committed 3 hours to getting to this point in the run. It's definitely not a friendly place to be.
Not only that, but it can also be very slow to back up a death. You see Luckless struggling to... He bounced on the taxi and got the bird, but he's struggling to actually collect the moon here. It's at a bit of an awkward angle.
There we go. So Neo just taking a quick visit to Princess Peach, who's just kind of chilling on top of the mountain here. After we've gathered her, we are going to take a quick bolt over to the Moon Rock, and that's really where the fun begins in this kingdom.
I'll be interested to see. There's actually a couple little strats that you can do moons slightly out of normal order in order to avoid a couple tricky jumps over poison. So let's see if Neo decides to go for some strats like that.
Yeah, these moons here reminiscent of any percent. We're just doing them out of order because they are kind of close to the Moon Rock in that particular fashion. Not getting the long jump out of there. Looks like he's going to be resetting that. Just grabbing the edge. So safely in with Captain Toad, but the trials are far from over in the Lost Kingdom here.
Oddly enough, jumping out of this room is much more difficult than jumping into it.
I would argue the same, yeah.
It's not hitting his head. Bonk on the ceiling, yeah.
Yeah, if you do bonk on the ceiling, you can kind of back it up with the near dump, but definitely a risky strategy there. And now the Moon Shards portion, another very risky thing. The game kind of wants you to use these tropical wigglers to kind of stretch your way over these stumps, but of course we don't have time for that, so we're going to be trying to capture all of these Moon Shards in a way that makes this very fast. But again, we're teetering over this instant death poison this entire time. Very risky. Neo probably making sure to take his time a little bit and not take a death. Any death in this particular portion would send you back to the Moon Rock, as that is the last kind of access point that we have in this kingdom.
Yeah, the one safety strat you can do is get the Captain Toad Moon and the one sitting on top of that tree out of order, and there's a checkpoint you can grab along the way, which would mean if you die, you respawn at that checkpoint a little bit closer to everything than the Moon Rock.
That's right.
And Neo's gonna capture the Wiggler here. The fastest way to do this is actually without the Wiggler. Now the Wiggler is the intended way, but you can do some spin throws to collect these notes, and it winds up being a little faster, but the Wiggler by far being more consistent.
Yeah, and the safer method.
And it also helps you with this rabbit moon, because you can just stretch out and easily hit the rabbit as he hops around this propeller.
Yeah, this rabbit is infamously difficult to capture as a result of being a little bit nasty. He, again, kind of like the moon, actually, he doesn't actually make any running animation, so in order to stop him, you kind of have to catch him in his tracks, which can be a little bit difficult to do.
And
so Neo opting for some safe strats here.
He exited the Wiggler capture right on top of the spot he needed to ground pound, so he cleverly waited until the Wiggler just despawned so that he could ground pound that spot without having to recapture and move it himself.
Yep, smart thinking on the fly. And that kind of encompasses the most difficult portion of Lost 2. He's on his way to exiting this kingdom now. Just has to get 2 moons within the time of this timer challenge, and then he'll be on his way. So definitely playing it smart here, playing it safe, looking to just complete Lost Kingdom without any technical difficulties. And then he'll be on his way to Moon Kingdom, which we do not spend very much time in at all.
And something that I don't think we have noted as commentators here, but Neo is on multiple minute PB pace, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it does look like that.
Beyond the implications of the race, probably looking to just play Lost a little safe to secure a nice little PP here. So yeah, Moon Kingdom, there are just a few moons right around the Odyssey that we're gonna come in and collect. Don't bother opening the Moon Rock because it's really far away, and it's kind of slow to travel through the Moon Kingdom because of the gravity, or lack thereof.
Yeah, this is another one of those kingdoms that actually has a moon routed out of it recently with Luncheon. So this kingdom is quite a bit faster than it actually was at one point. So we're just gathering a couple of very quick moons that are located around the Odyssey. One Captain Toad moon, one Hint Art, as well as one of the final stops for this tourist who we have not seen since the Luncheon Kingdom. But also an integral stop to make because we can gather another quick moon in Mushroom Kingdom if we visit the Moon Kingdom first to talk to this tourist. Talking to the tourist, now he's going to be back on his way to Luncheon again. Some extra moons here. We only did about half of what is available to us in Luncheon. There are quite a few of very quick moons still available here.
So yeah, we'll actually go through one more painting at the end of this visit to Luncheon Kingdom, which will take us back to Mushroom, where we'll round out all of the moon collection to get us to 500. And then from there, on to the darker side.
Yep, Neo entering this little sub area again. We were talking.
Oh, take the
Fast.
death.
Just a little bit of I find that sometimes these little lava bubbles have some weird mechanics as far as momentum is concerned. Sometimes just like landing on a platform the wrong way can kill your momentum. I think that's kind of what happened there.
It looked like that time he sort of bumped into one of the other Otobos popping out of the lava, and it killed his momentum on the spot.
Yeah,
Something
something
that can
along those
happen.
lines.
Luckless having some troubles with throwing his cap in the direction that he wants to. That's something that I've experienced many occasions. Just, the game doesn't seem to want to input the way that you tell it to.
Yeah, especially when it comes to motion controls, I find the most common cappy problems I have are trying to go for a spin throw and getting an up throw instead, or vice versa. Just, you know, the nature of motion controls in general, which can be frustrating for speedrunners.
It's definitely not the most accurate things in the world, but they're not so bad at the end of the day. We're just gonna roll on a giant corn cob here.
Get the Goomba stack over to this lovely Goomba lady who for us. Goomba moons being another one of those Toadette achievements, if I'm not entirely mistaken. So, you know, again, kind of playing into the fact that Toadette moons are kind of the basis, the roots of this entire route. We kind of look to try and accomplish as many of those as we can because each moon that Toadette gives us, even though they're really slow, or like not slow, but really boring to kind of sit through, each one is only about 8 seconds. So definitely making an effort to try and accomplish as many of those quick goals as we can.
Neo electing for the crowd pleaser strat, as most people should. They're actually, for these Toad achievement, or these Toad music moons, there are generally multiple tracks that you can pick from in order to get him to give you a moon. And in this case, picking this song is technically slower, but we all do it anyways because who doesn't want to listen to a straight banger for a few minutes?
Yeah, definitely the good choice. Yeah, finishing up with Slots Moon. Like we said, the slots are actually rather slow on their own, but when combined together, you do get kind of a three for one deal. And now it is kind of funny to note that these guys are in the same kingdom at the same time, but of course we do split up our last Luncheon visit into 2 chunks. So Luckless, in the beginning portion of Luncheon, still has to go through all of the other very fast small kingdoms outside of the painting chain. Neo on his way out after a couple of quick moves here.
So a kind of funny thing that I always like to point out is this moon that you're going to see Neo do next, where he jumps in the cannon and shoots up to the top of the archway. For the longest time, all of us did all this crazy movement to jump up there without using the cannon until somebody sat down one day and just timed things and were like, hey, idiots, using the intended way is faster.
Yeah. I myself included definitely had kind of fallen for that, but to be fair, I didn't even know the cannon existed until it was pointed out to me, so...
Yeah, because that cannon isn't there until post-game, and I think many of us were so used to having to jump up onto that top of that cliff the hard way from any percent that we just kind of didn't even think about it. Luckless taking a spill there, but didn't die. He managed to salvage that somewhat. So he'll only have to go through like half of this room again to reach the top and grab the second moon.
It is an unfortunate mistake to make, but definitely better than taking a death in this room.
Yeah, it can be hard to dive back down onto that platform if you bonk at the spot that he bonked, but he manages to do it nicely there.
So now Neo is approaching this kind of island, the final stop on our adventure here in the Luncheon Kingdom. He's just going to go about breaking open some of these cracks in the floor to spawn one more moon. This is also the location of one more 2D sub area that we have actually recently routed out. So he will be making quick work of these cracks and then be on his way to the Mushroom Kingdom.
Oh, gets sniped by the giant vegetable there.
Yeah, getting hit in the face with a pepper on his way out.
Luckless nicely performing that timer challenge jump to get to Captain Toad here.
Yeah, very slick.
So he'll be coming up on his moon dump of his own as Neo enters the last kingdom before he reaches the darker side. So we're going to see... He's going to run around and clean up the moons that he didn't get first visit, and then he's going to enter the castle. And at this point is where he's going to collect all of those achievements from Toadette, which is a multiple minute long process of him just talking to Toadette over and over again because the game didn't want to give us these moons all at once. You have to talk to her individually for each one, which he will do 31 times.
Yeah, a bit of an unfortunate setup there. Maybe an oversight. I imagine Nintendo did to have kind of stockpiled Toadette's achievements all at once. But, of course, being speedrunners, that is the fastest way to do it. Probably just wanted to make that kind of like a hub point where you could just continue to revisit Toadette and get achievements as you were completing them. But obviously not the optimal way to do it in a speedrun setting, so we have to gather them all one at a time. We are going to see Neo go for a little bit of a strategy to speed up talking to Toadette. It used to just be a button masher point in time, but there is a kind of first-person method that you can employ to make talking to her just a tiny bit faster.
Yeah, it's something you can do with pretty much a lot of NPCs in this game. If you go into first-person mode before, like as you stand in front of them, the trigger to be able to talk to them appears sooner. So he's going to try to do that for each of the 31 times he needs to talk to Toadette. Zoom into first person and then press A to talk. And it actually saves a pretty significant amount of time. I think it's about 12 seconds over the course of those 31 moons, if you do it perfectly. And you may have noticed that Luckless had about 300. He had 399 moons on his moon dump, whereas Neo had 397. That's a very common thing. Like, their route in general is the same, but depending on when they get certain moons, particularly the moons in Mushroom Kingdom, that moon dump number can wind up being anywhere from like 394 to 400, I believe.
Yeah, something along those lines.
So it doesn't mean that one of them was over, one of them was short, just slightly varying routes.
Yeah. With there being so many moons in the game, and, you know, we have been kind of optimizing the route for a lot of these moons and kind of juggling them around as we find out that some of them may be a better choice. That being said, there are a couple that are just on the cusp. Some of them that might be easier for some runners to grab versus others, so it could be in some runners' best interest to kind of pick the ones that they like the most, and we'll probably not be losing too much time as a result.
And there are actually some moons where it truly makes no difference whether you grab them first or second visit. The one that immediately comes to mind is ground pounding the nose of the giant Bowser statue in Bowser's Kingdom.
Indeed,
you can do that either first or second visit, and it makes no time difference whatsoever.
Another good example actually is this chunk that Neo is performing right now, where kind of taking a jaunt through the Mushroom Kingdom to gather some moons. There actually is no real discernible difference between gathering these first visit or second, so just a couple of personal preference options available as you traverse through this darker side route. And now Neo is talking to Toadette, which of course is the absolute most exciting part of the entire run.
Yeah, so might be best for everyone to avert your eyes over to Luckless's screen for the next handful of minutes. See him do a bit more exciting things in Cap Kingdom and coming up on Lost Kingdom. See if he can have as nice of a loss as Neo did.
Yeah. Cannot really be understated just how clean Neo's Lost Kingdom was, because things typically do go wrong there, especially after a fatiguing 3-hour run you've already kind of endured.
So I do want to say that while Luckless is quite a bit behind in this race, and it will likely finish that way as Neo approaches his time to enter the darker side, Luckless will not be knocked out of the tournament. This is a double elimination tournament. He will, you know, if the results hold as they currently seem to like they will be, he'll move down in the loser's bracket, where he will wait to face a yet undetermined opponent. So double elimination, double the fun.
Yeah, much more darker side action coming your way as a result.
Yes, and again, this is the very first match of this tournament, so truly tons of darker side follow over the next probably couple of months.
Luckless now on the bird cycle portion of Cap Kingdom. Got to make sure that he's doing all of this in a timely fashion, looking at the hint art, talking to Princess Peach, Then he's got a ground pound moon on a lower platform here. Got to make a jump back up, hit the sign, get a hint art moon, as well as a moon out in the open, and then capture the bird.
So we see Neo is about 5 moons away from having all the ones he needs. 31 Toadette achievements, it comes out to... Oh, actually, I don't know the number it's going to come out to because he has a different mushroom too than I do. I think he needs slightly more than this. He'll probably need about 66 or so. He's sitting at 60 right now.
Yep, just a couple more. And then, of course, the moment of truth. Hoping that he's been paying attention to his count this nerve-wracking. Just the Odyssey for the last time. Putting in those final few moons into the Odyssey.
So Luckless had a bit of trouble with the ground pound moon from the hint art. And was a bit late on the bird cycle, so he had to chase it down there. Wound up right next to that danger sign, so he's just gonna have to travel all the way back to get this note's moon.
Yeah, doing these a little bit out of order, but making sure that he grabs the bird before he flies away.
Yeah, bird kind of becomes priority. And Neo does have exactly 500 moons, so no flaws in his routing as he went through this run. He'll be moving on to the darker side. And the final
of course,
challenge of the game.
Yeah, this was intended to be kind of the hardest level available to you in the game. Speedrunners tend to make quite an easy work of it, especially when you consider things like the frog skip glitch that was discovered. 1.0 has this trick available to them where they can kind of just swim across the space void with one of the frogs upcoming here in order to skip all of the dungeon's existence. However, this particular tournament is not going to be utilizing that glitch. It is not available in 1.2, which makes it a little bit unfair for 1.0 users to use, so we will instead be opting to do the dungeon. But even then, there is a glitch available in the dungeon that will allow us to skip part of it anyways, so... Still...
Honestly, I wouldn't even call it a glitch, but there is a trick that allows you to skip a good portion of the later sections of this dungeon.
Yeah, I suppose it isn't really a glitch. We're not doing any sort of game-breaking maneuvers. We're just utilizing a capture in a way that the game was maybe not expecting for us to do.
So I don't know what to keep my eyes on. Neo's in the dungeon. Luckless is in Lost 2. These are probably the two most execution heavy, or two of the most execution heavy things in front.
Yeah, especially for the ending portion of it anyways. Luckless on his way to break open the moon rock where the real fun begins. Now Neo looks like he's going to be opting for some uprootless strategies for this particular dungeon.
This can be very risky because if you miss your hat dive there, you'll fall to your death, but Neo executes it nicely. We'll see if he can slip through this cycle here. He does just barely make it past the fuzzies.
Yeah, very, very time-heavy restriction there. As soon as you kind of slip into the rock wall there, you have to be very fast in order to get past the fuzzies in a timely fashion, which does make that method a little bit faster, but there is also a way you can kind of skip a lot of the fuzzy area by using the uproot available to you at the beginning in order to make kind of a jump up over the platform.
Yes, and Neo getting a moment to relax on this flower path before he enters the last section of the dungeon, where he will perform a skip that really skips over three major sections actually, of this dungeon.
Yeah, the first one, of course, being the very visible chunk that is directly below you as you fly by. which is kind of a fork flicking section that leads to a pipe, the other section being inside the pipe. And then when you also come out of the pipe, there is another section involving a Bowser capture and another kind of pseudo escape sequence. And using this glide-on, we're actually going to be kind of flying over all of that in order to get to the end a little bit faster.
So yeah, just using motion controls to shake as you enter that tornado shoots you up into the air really high, and then you can just continue to shake to keep glide on. He maintains his height better when you use motion controls to fly, which was also utilized in Sand Kingdom to collect a moon that was hanging in the middle of the air that I don't think we mentioned, but it's particularly useful here because it skips, I want to say, multiple minutes of this dungeon.
Yeah, it has to be somewhere in that kind of range. And you can see making sure to fly kind of around this final platform. There is a little bit of a kind of a hitbox that forces you to exit glide on if you hit it, but by flying around it like that, you can avoid that entirely.
Oh, Luckless gonna take a death, accidentally diving off of the propeller.
Yep.
And he did grab that checkpoint that I mentioned earlier, so it's not going to cost him as much time as it otherwise would have if he had not grabbed that checkpoint. He would have spawned all the way back at the Moon Rock. And Neo will exit the dungeon and make a few jumps with the frog up to the top of the imitation New Donk City Hall, where the final multi-moon of the game awaits him. And if this was in English, Cappy would be making us all cry with his sentimental story about how fun the journey was.
Yep. What a journey it has been. Capturing a lot of the very fastest moons in the game, making a revisit to all of the kingdoms, doing what I would, again, consider to be the objectively best category in this game if you are looking for content, and, you know, doing this Darker Side dungeon, albeit a little bit in a speed run way, but Neo's got to be very happy with this time, a 5:23. That does appear to be a PB for him.
Yes. So nicely done to Neo, kicking off the tournament strongly with, I think, about a 3-minute PB for him. As well as, if that time is accurate, he actually just tied my 3rd place time.
Oh.
So depending on if he split late or not, either slipping into a tie or possibly sole possession of 3rd place with this run. So nicely done to Neo. As Luckless now will enter the Moon Kingdom, getting close to the end himself. And you know the funny thing is, if this is indeed a tie, it would not be the first time that I would be tied in Darker Side, which is insane to say for a 3.5 hour long category. There should not be ties happening.
It's such a long category. It's still not entirely optimized, so it is pretty incredible that to the second people can still have a time that is comparable. So yeah, very well done on Neo's part for sure. He's got to be happy with that PB.
So yeah, I would say Luckless in the cleanup phase of this run, and I believe he is also on PB pace, as well as by multiple minutes, much like Neo was. So he'll head back to Luncheon now for the last major kingdom of the run.
That being Luncheon Kingdom, at least the remainder portion of it.
So yeah, the second and third visits of Luncheon used to be combined into one. And the route was exactly the same. So you would have warped to the Odyssey from Toad, much like you did in the second visit. And then they would just go straight into these moons. But, like we mentioned earlier, just a bit of menuing difference. It saves a little bit of time to do this split up as opposed to having mushrooms split up into 3 visits.
Ooh, Luckless taking a death in the area here. We do tend to kind of skip a little, jumping across the lava here to make it a little bit faster for ourselves. But taking a little bit of a tumble there.
Looks like he's going for a bit of a faster strat, leaping across this gap.
There we go.
Doesn't need to use the cannon since he already collected that first move.
A little bit of a tumble in the lava there as well. Having a little bit of difficulty capturing this fire bro. Hopefully he doesn't take another death here. We're capturing him just fine.
So yeah, while we watch Luckless clean up the rest of this run, Neo advancing to round 3 of this tournament, and he will face the winner of your match against Zinpars.
Indeed. So depending on how that one goes, I could facing Neo in the next round.
Yes, you might be next on Neo's chopping block.
Oh boy. Yeah, Neo definitely a formidable opponent, especially in Darker Side. Definitely shaking in my booties. 323 is much better than I have accomplished in Darker Side so far. So unless I'm able to put in some major grind work, I'm gonna have my work cut out for me. That, of course, being said, if I beat Zinpars in the meantime.
I was gonna say that you guys are, I think, the closest in seeding that would be matched up at that point in the tournament. So
Yeah.
potentially will be the closest or most interesting round 3 match if everything goes as things are seeded. But there's a lot to be determined yet.
Let's see if Luckless here is a man of the people. He certainly is. Putting on a banger for all of us.
It's a trend that I'm glad has caught on. A lot of, because you can just scroll down a couple times and pick a song that's relatively quick on the list. I think it's song number 4. But picking this song, everyone loves it too much. I can't resist.
Oof, just messing up the slots here. The timing can be a little bit finicky. You have to so we'll let Cappy go in order to get the slots optimally.
So there's some slick movement you can do to get up on top of this roof and break the box in time. We'll see Luckless kind of take the approach of just hitting the box first and then making his way up to the roof. But
yeah, it's a little bit tricky to get that movement. Kind of involves a dive directly afterwards, so
the camera's not entirely in your favor, and it's kind of an awkward angled dive. So definitely not the easiest strat in the world.
We're going to see Luckless set up a couple things in Luncheon. We are very, very close to approaching the end of this kingdom, though. Just got to grab a couple quick moons along the way.
So yeah, the entire goal of the routing is just to work your way towards the painting, essentially. So you'll notice that as a trend in a lot of the kingdoms. Just working from one painting to the other in the best manner possible while collecting as many fast moves as you can.
Yeah, with some kingdoms being the exception, of course, you do a lot of warping around in some cases.
Yeah.
Basically, kingdoms like Sand, for example, which kind of are big and open and diverse and are kind of separated by chunks of places where things are able to be finished and done.
So making his way to the island here that contains the warp painting, just 2 more moons to collect, and he'll be off to Mushroom to similarly speak to Toadette for minutes. The absolute thrill of the run.
Yeah, I can think of nothing I would much rather do than listen to Toadette tell me all the things I've already done. In Japanese, no less. Also taking a pepper to the face on his way seems to be a common fault of this darker side category.
Yeah, so Luckless entering Mushroom. If his speedrun.com PB is to be believed, then it should be on multiple minute PB phase here. So regardless of race results, looking like we're going to get 2 pretty good times, time improvements from both the runners today, which is always what you want to see.
Absolutely.
Both runners can PB, then that's a good race. That's a successful day. So, since we have to sit and wait here for Toadette for a couple minutes, starting soon, what's your favorite Toadette achievement moon, Dangers?
Oh my goodness, my favorite Toadette achievement. Now, are we including the ones that are only available in Dark Side, or are we
let's just talk about them all.
Let's talk about them all. All right, well...
then we can talk about Jump, Jump, Jump.
Isn't that a fun one? I was going to say that Fly, Cappy, Fly has got to be my favorite, and the reason for that being, the incredibly fun cap throw farm that is associated with it. As a speedrunner anyway, when you do all unique moons, you actually can't get those 2 moons just by playing the game through. We have to do a little bit of a farming section. So I would say that I much prefer the the farming associated with cap throws over the farming associated with jumping.
It affords you a nice opportunity for a bathroom break.
It does, and that's why I like it so much. The jump farm, not so much. You kind of have to shake your controller, pay attention so you don't get killed by a Koopa. It's just not fun.
Yeah, it's quite literally painful.
Yes. But you can skip arm day that day, which is kind of... Now, if I remember, Luckless actually did all of his Mushroom Kingdom stuff in the first visit, so he can go straight to Toadette now.
Yep. Accounting for part of that discrepancy in their moon dump counts. So it looks like he does need to get light in the ceiling and probably tiles if that's in his route as well. Yes, looks like he is going to do both of those things. So kind of doing the opposite of Neo, grabbing these 2 moons now, whereas Neo got them first visit, and then Luckless got all of the other Mushroom moons first visit, whereas Neo got them second.
And this all more or less comes down to preference. You could say that doing these particular moons is actually a little bit faster just because, or sorry, in the first visit I mean, is a little bit faster just because you have to look at the hint art come in here anyway. But that being said, we also do have to talk to Toadette, and the last of the tile moons kind of pops up right next to her, so it is more or less down to preference.
So, also employing these first-person talking to Toadette strats, which is actually harder than it looks, in my opinion. Camera likes to do all sorts of crazy things when you zoom in.
Kitten's favorite part of the whole run right here. You can tell by her exciting meows that she loves Toadette.
She's thrilled.
She's actually rubbing herself up against the screen as we speak, so she must really enjoy it.
Kitten's sticking with the classic Toadette. She doesn't need no Bowsette, right?
That's right. She ain't about those memes.
So, with the way Luckless approached Mushroom 2, he should have 61 moons when this is all said and done, if he got all of the achievements. So we're looking at about 21 moons away. And should he need backups, hopefully he doesn't, but there's really only one halfway decent backup in Mushroom Kingdom since he already got the Tiles moon in his route. And that's the 2D Nodes moon around the well. If he needed any extras beyond that, it's quite a big time loss.
Yeah, you more or less have to go out of your way for those. We do gather all of the absolute fastest moons in the Mushroom Kingdom. It might even be worth just like taking a visit somewhere else in the kingdom. Maybe even like going out of his way to buy purple coins so that he can access the hat or the costume sub area. There's not very many options available in the Mushroom Kingdom.
Yeah, Mushroom Kingdom moons are either really fast or really slow. There's not much in between, not much middle ground. I know the first Darker Side run I ever did, I was a couple moons short, and I wound up doing Koopa free running.
Ah, there you go.
That is pretty slow. That's
not
probably
a terrible choice.
Close to a minute just for one moon, whereas the slowest moons in this route are really like around 23 seconds.
Yep.
Not including the story moons that you have to get.
And I mean, if you were down 3 moons, for example, you could potentially go boss, but again, not a very optimal choice.
So it looks like he's about 6 moons away from being done here. The suspense is killing me. Will he have enough?
We can only hope so. This is honestly the most nerve-wracking part of the run for me. Obviously, Toadette is a resident sleeper, but once you get out of Toadette, the moon counter does hit 500 is always just a very nerve-wracking experience.
And it looks like he will have enough here to get to 500. So yeah, it looks like he's on about 346 pace if he has a good Darker Side dungeon.
Yeah, the run is still technically not over. There is some potential here to mess up still, this being the quote-unquote hardest challenge of the game. So anything can happen here, but as long as he makes quick work of it, this should still be a PB for Luckless as well.
So I would honestly say that I think Darker Side might be the most challenging part of the game. Not like some people kind of say that jokingly, but I can't really think of too many things that are more difficult. Just from a being able to complete it standpoint.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, I suppose that is how the game was designed. This being the kind of final challenge available to you in the game.
I know some people think the Dark Side boss rush is a little bit more difficult, which I could understand.
Yeah, as a speedrunner, I would disagree. I think that once you've learned the speed strategies for those bosses, they become incredibly easy. But yeah,
And I
the
think
added
the
mechanic.
same more or less holds true for the Darker Side. Once you kind of have an idea of how to get through it, it's not terribly difficult.
Certainly. In fact, as a speedrunner, the part that probably trips me up the most is this part that Luckless is approaching right here. I definitely go for some strategies that involve skipping this portion entirely. Luckless going for a little bit of a safer option to intended way, going across these flinging poles without any cap throws as well, but definitely the part that I take the most damage in is that first part there, and then the rest tends to be a bit of a cakewalk as speedrun is concerned.
We'll see. Luckless can play it a little safer here and make it through this rolling log section without taking a death. There are some recovery hearts that you can pick up along the way, such as in that block. So taking damage in the Darker Side isn't a death sentence. There are plenty of there are actually a lot of heart refills scattered throughout. You just gotta know where they are.
Yeah.
Oh, taking damage once again, so he's on life support for the second time in this dungeon. Gonna wait for the good cycle spikes.
Just makes it in. Now hopefully he knows about some of the area.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he went for... Okay, he knows about a heart around the back here. I was gonna say, I would be surprised if he went for Uprootless without getting some kind of recovery heart. But he's gonna take the Uproot as well. Probably a safe play. I personally still go through this section with the Uproot.
Me as
I find
well.
it much more consistent than what you saw Neo do. But optimally, I think a couple seconds slower. But if you do use the Uproot, you have the advantage of being able to skip over the top.
Yeah, and also another life heart available to you in that block should you need it. And then he's on his way to this Yoshi part. Again, the only actual place in the run that you do use Yoshi, but it's only to kind of stick to these walls as you take a nice little ride up.
Just a leisurely stroll riding up a wall, and followed up by a leisurely stroll across a flower path. It's a very intimidating level, I promise.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that maybe this particular section, you were intended to hit these laser platform things in order to break some blocks, but
they definitely
really
weren't expecting people to triple jump over those blocks.
Yeah.
They don't expect too much from their casual players over at Nintendo a lot of the times, but the beautiful part of this game is that there's a lot of things that are easy to do but can be done faster in a much more challenging way, which is what makes it such a good speed game.
Indeed, can agree with that.
Very easy to get started with and very high skill cap.
And now we approach perhaps the final stretch of the Darker Side dungeon.
It doesn't get quite the height that he wants, so he's going to drop back down and try again on the second tornado. And that time getting plenty of height.
Yeah, that should do just fine. And again, making his way safely around this platform so Glidon does not despawn in any way.
Yeah, if you're too close to the center, either from not being wide enough out or not being high enough above the center of that platform, it will forcefully exit you from the glide-on capture, and you'll probably fall to your death. So you gotta be careful to swing it wide or make sure you have enough height so that won't happen. Luckless makes it up just fine, and he will ride across the letters.
Just the game's final little thank you to you for going through the hardest chunk of the game, not opting to skip ideas. Again, this is kind of the end of the run. The U-skip saves probably only 2 seconds or so, but once you've come this far in the run, you don't really want to lose it. I've definitely seen that happen to some runners.
So once again, Cappy trying to make us cry. If only we could read it. Joke's on you, Cappy.
Yeah. Opting for Japanese as it is the scrolling language choice in the game.
Otherwise, you know, we have to play in Japanese, because if we could read it, our eyes would just be full of tears and we wouldn't be able to make it to the top of the tower.
That'd be really rough. I do feel bad for the local Japanese runner for that particular reason.
Gotta be tough. Quite the struggle. And Luckless coming in with the high 347 to round out his run.
That is going to be a PB for him as well. Excellent showing.
Wait, I can't hear anything, but I think you can hear me. One sec.
Yeah, I think we're trying to get Luckless in here to talk about his run. He is muted.
Bizarre.
So yeah, it looks like some technical issues right here, but trying to get Luckless in here. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and look at the schedule for this tournament. And if I bring that up very quickly, I think we have the match with Dangers and Zinpars on Thursday.
Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, I believe.
Yes, and as of now, that is the only other match scheduled. So as we get this first round of the tournament underway, you know, we're still getting geared up, and people are working out when they can schedule their matches. And we're also waiting for certain actual round 1 matches to be played out, because there are a couple of round 1 matches that play into round 2. This match you saw today was actually a round 2 match. So Neo with the win, he's moving into round 3, which is the quarterfinals.
Yes, quite a bit into the tournament. We are going to have to wait for some round 1 matches to commence, finish, and then move on to round 2 in order to see just how that's going to play into the rest of the tournament. But I think that particular chunk of the bracket is going to be accessible as soon as my match with Zinpars is done, actually. So, you know, no real strict schedule on the speed gaming tournament as well. We also are going to have some losers bracket matches set up as the tournament commences, so be sure to tune in to some of those.
Yeah, but we have a lot of good matches that are to come in this tournament. It's I think 19 total entrants, and pretty much every person who's spent a significant amount of time on this category has entered this tournament.
Yep, I believe, with the exception of Timpani, I believe But yes, you're right. Just about everybody has entered this tournament, and giving it a shot, giving it some much needed love. I think giving it a nice showcase, which is always exciting, especially with a category that is perhaps has some room for optimization. So very exciting to see some of this tournament action come underway. So thank you. It does not look like we're going to be getting lucky.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, no interviews for the post, but GG's to both runners anyways.
Well done, PBs on both sides of the race. So good stuff from the runners. Again, much more darker side to come over the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that.
And we will see you next time. Have yourselves a wonderful evening. Thanks for sticking around and tuning in.